talking about mutable options.
Okay, so yeah, we have discussed this in the past. This was a foundation goal for all the project. And at a glance, Nova has known the connecting bits to make this possible. Also, config had the biggest, the main changes needed to make this possible in other projects. And when we brought this up the first time, the main point of discussion was how we could deal with drivers reloading configurations and what would be possible scenarios whether we want to reload all configurations, we want to reload only a few configurations. So that wasn't really settled. I don't know if people had a clear picture of what other projects were doing or what AutoConfig allows to do. So I'll give a very brief overview on what AutoConfig, how it works, right? So we also have the link here. So the way AutoConfig does is when you start the service, you have to change the function to call the new mutable config file, the mutable config function that will handle all the reloading part. So when the service receives a seed hop, it will reload all the configs, and whoever is reading the config object will receive the new values, right? So for example, if a driver is connected to the storage, and every time that you connect to the storage, it reads the IP again. If we go and set the option as bootable, it will receive the default value as on the flight. So this is pretty straightforward. The only thing that the main question that comes to discussion is how we could deal, which options we should make bootable, and so first question. We know it's possible to make the options bootable, but we have almost 1,000 options.
Yep.
Which of them should we make bootable?
Yep.
Wow. I'm curious how this works with the with driver options, because don't we clone config stuff into separate objects when we spawn off the back end?
Sorry?
When we start off the multi-backend volume driver processes, don't we clone configuration stuff around?
No.
No?
No. We just each drivers do it in a different way.
Yeah.
Some drivers access directly from the config option.
A lot of drivers.
At least I see that the driver has a self-config configuration. I don't know if that is a clone. If it's a clone, you just need to go and not clone, do just point or something like that.
So a lot of drivers only read the config options at startup time.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we need to have some idea with this that we'll reload the drivers, or if that's a whole separate thing.
I don't think it's necessarily to be to load drivers, because not all the options are used to make initial configuration.
Yeah.
in the case, for example, the generic NFS, when you start the driver, you have to read the idea of your nest, the path for your exports, and then you do a mount in it. So if this cannot be a changeable option,
Right.
At least not right away, without further effort in the driver, and I'll get to that later, because Oslo also supports that you register in the driver. It's like a callback, that when you reload the options, this callback will be triggered, and then the driver or someone else can go and do some stuff along.
Oh. I thought it was going to make them like a dynamic object that we could just read.
And then you mean by just a watcher, then okay, fine.
No, I was assuming that there wasn't the whole callback thing involved.
Yeah, the callback is only for this case where the config options are not necessarily read directly. So moving back to the NFS activity sample. So if you would do reloadable options for the NFS, you would need to remount all your export path and stuff like that. But if you have a storage, for example, and you're just change the port for the storage, if you read the config option direct from the config object, then you're going to have the new value, and then the new request that you send go to that new port. Right? So, and they list here three cases. The first one, so the first case is when the option is being checked every time.
Mm-hmm.
So like you are getting the IP address, and every time that you're saving your request, you get it for the config option, and then again. The second one is that you get a set of values, you do kind of have some sequential steps, and then you use a cached value. You don't read directly from the configure option. You read, store it in memory properly, and then you use that for a while. And some drivers, they do like for the lifetime of the driver. So they read it at startup and keep using from that file. And that would be hard for drivers to change. And then the third option is options that affect the state, which one the one that I mentioned for the generic NFS, that you have to get an export path, and then you have to go to mount the folder. For those ones, we can use the callback, right? So my suggestion is that we implement this for Cinder in a generic way, not adding any of the options as mutable. And we have a spec to go through all to define, or we can also do this spec to define all the core options that you want to change. And we left up to the drivers to decide whether they want to change their options or not.
So what changes would be involved in the base generic implementation? So you'd just put the plumbing in to use Oslo and make it possible to handle sig hubs correctly and reload the config?
Yeah.
Okay.
Our first implementation will be one line. I think there's
I think we already use SIG Hub, so some of that is there. I think SIGHUP is used already for some of the rolling upgrade stuff, so we may need to figure out.
Right?
Well, we already use SIGHUP for some of the rolling upgrade stuff, I think. So we'll have to make sure that whatever we do with that.
Now, we see there's not, already, it doesn't already have a callback for that.
It doesn't have one?
I don't know. Eventually, if there's another thing doing processing that signal, I don't know if the signal is.
Yeah, it's used to reset the RPC versions, which is a minor thing. I mean, it's fine, but we just need to make sure that we know what all it's doing when we have it doing more than one thing, and that it's not going to step on each other.
Yeah, so, I'm going to update the spec. I have I had resurrected the spec that Kendall initially wrote. I even have updated with some of the concepts. At the time that I wrote this, I was not already aware of the way that post config was doing this. So I'm gonna update this. And I think that in this spec we can also add a set of core changes that we can discuss whether we should change them or if they are safe to change. We will go over that.
Yeah, I think almost any option that we want to add reloadable to is going to require a good bit of analysis to make sure that it's not going to break anything.
And for the big debugging, if you look at the link that I sent for the lookable, the reference, the help reference, it has a very good example on how to use the book, because the debug we set it to the start of the file, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when we receive, and it not necessarily will read the config object, then we have to set it. For example, if you want to make logging usable, which I think is very useful, we need to set a rule for it.
Well, the logging one's interesting because we have code for the logging one already, but it should be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
It's for free. One more way to do it.
So I think the next steps are you get the spec updated, and start working on putting the plumbing in place for the general support in Cinder.
Yeah.
I don't think we have any concerns around that.
I assume that's not actually a ton of code to do that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the hardest part is to do the analysis for all I mean, the generic support for cinders is more like just to call the proper function from all the config.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then you have to do the analysis for each of the variables and then set the rule for all the ones that we agree to.
Okay.
Are we going to output, we probably need to output the reloadable field in our sample config, don't we? Otherwise, nobody's going to know which ones can get reloaded. So we probably need to.
In the help text. So
Yeah, the sample config that we generate.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to need to say
Yeah.
reloadable on ones that are, otherwise no one's going to have any idea
Right.
which ones it works on.
Oh, okay.
That should be pretty easy
Yeah,
to
that's
do
a
though.
perfect question. How do we make people to know which options are loaded or not?
Right.
Because looking at the code, you can see that the loadable would be there, but how do we complicated. So,
I think the sample config is all we've really got to start with.
Yeah,
Maybe Oslo config thing that does that.
yeah, maybe all of them. At least they should. Those should be like something that else.
It does what?
No, I'm saying there should be, if Oslo config doesn't do that, like they do with the deprecated
Mhm.
or there's also like an advanced.
Oh, you think it might just happen already?
Yeah, and if it doesn't, we could put the patch there.
Yeah, it might already happen. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm hoping somebody would do this.
should we go ahead for our photo and we can finish this up when we get back
Sure.
while we're waiting for Glance?
Yeah, I'm cool with this.
I mean, I guess the only other question we should think about how we're going to determine which options are mutable or not and put together a plan for that.
We will remove this back.
I mean,
And then, I will not pick, but I'll look to the config options and see ones that are interesting. Maybe send an email on the mailing list for operators to see what's important to them.
Okay.
yeah, it would be good to know. I mean, the logging ones are pretty awesome or pretty obvious, but it would be good to know which ones people want.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as figuring out how to do it, it's going to depend a lot on what the option is. I mean, I don't think we're going to get out of doing lots of reading code to figure out, how options are used to do that.
Okay, so we'll work it through the spec and then, if we need to have more discussion, we can either do it in the meetings or when we get together for the mid-cycle, which you should be able to join remotely again. So, okay, cool. Let's go so we're not late. Rajat will be back shortly.
Okay, Jay.
Everybody come smile pretty.
didn't join the photo?
Ah, come on.
Actually look good in this hoodie.
You're doing more fun stuff.
Yes. Okay.
And what? Did you get the picture already?
Amy took
Oh,
it. She took one.
I think I was standing behind you for hers. Yeah.
Yeah. But I look good in this hoodie. Okay.
This is a Upstream Institute thing.
Yeah.
I haven't got much clothes. It's like swag in a while. I need to stock up on some more.
Oh my God. Erlon's like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah. Oh, that's funny.
I need to go stock up on some Shadowman swag for all busy.
So keep finding them. Well, to be protocol, you can just say, anyway.
Hey, Mike. See you again.
But if I go to it's not easy.
So, how's your morning? Good. Productive, despite us not having our shadow leader here. We delegated all the things to you. Okay.
Morning, Joshua.
What's that?
Morning, Joshua. No, maybe
No.
just need to know that we do.
I woke up at
Back.
6:30 and thought, no, shit. 1 more hour will be fine. And I went, slept for another hour and I pounded a bunch of water and that was fine. But I was tired. But it was worth it.
It was good.
If you look at yours.
It was. Oh, we never stopped recording. Well, that's fun. Well, we might as well just keep going then. So, what was it that we were going to talk about? Hashtag Cinder. No.
Multi-store?
Yeah.
Multi-store?
Multi-store. Lilu Dallas. If we name the multi-store feature Lilu Dallas, we can do it.
It'll be like the third thing in Cinder that starts with multi now. Multi-path, multi-attach, multi-store. So many multis.
Could we do something that, never mind. I was just thinking of badge support, but. Cinder handling of image. Okay, so this is all you, Brian, and your
It's
glance.
actually Abhishek, but
Oh,
so
okay.
the basic setup is Glance has a multi-store feature that allows an end user to specify which store an image is going to go into. So Glance team would like to extend this to the Cinder volume to image creation action. So the question is just what's the proper way to do that? Whether we would expose, add a command to the Cinder API, not a command, but add an option to the Cinder API that would allow you to specify the store that the image is going to go to. Or Eric had mentioned another option would be to encode that as part of the volume type, so that a specific volume type would naturally get its images into a particular store. So the basic idea with the stores is that they'd be kind of abstract. We're encouraging operators not to expose details about what's in there, but the idea is you have something like super cheap or more expensive, depending on, some kind of operator criteria. So it'd be like, gold, silver, and bronze.
Or geolocation based, which is the big push at the moment.
So the problem with so if Cinder accepted the idea of extending the API call to include a stores option.
The upload volume.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, right, the upload volume to image API. There needs to be a way for a user to discover what the store name is that could provide a valid store name. So there is a discovery call in Image API that allows you to get the list of stores that are available. But that's a different API call. So you'd have to go, so if you're a user to do this, if you wanted to go to a non-default Glance store, you'd have to go to Glance first, do the stores discovery call, find out what store name you wanted to do, and then you go to Cinder and just create an image from a volume in the normal way, except you add the store name to the request.
So the first question is whether this is something that gets exposed to the Cinder user or if it's something the Cinder admin sets up.
Right.
And
So
I don't think that's clear yet.
okay. So all right. So as part of the question, I guess, of the right. So we have several options. The one is to just be Cinder admin could specify a particular store. The other would be you could hide it in the volume types, which would basically make an admin.
Which is still the
specify
admin
a store.
specifying.
Are you just talking about the Cinder store option or generally any Glance store?
This is just for the Glance store.
I mean, the Cinder store, the Glance is Cinder as a store.
No, it's-
No, so we are talking, so Glance, regardless of what store type you're using, we can now specify multiple stores under same Glance. So you can have 3 different Cinder clusters behind Glance, and user can select, like, I want to have my images on this one, or you can have 3 different Ceph clusters as a Glance stores, and user can select, like, I want to have my image on this Ceph cluster. And now what we would like to have kind of common understanding is how do we do that when Cinder creates the image? So how much we expose to the user, what is the reasonable default value? So Glance has a default store that needs to be defined. So if it's not on the call, if the store is not on the API call, we will just store it to the default store. But having the option to actually, for deployments that want to expose it, so that user can go and select, I want that image live on this specific store. How do we do that when Cinder creates that image instead of user creates the image from client?
We have the same problem other way around. When Glance is asking Cinder to store the image, Cinder is speaking more than the store. We have multiple volume types out in the Glance specified which.
No, we are talking when Cinder creates an image from a volume.
yeah, that's a whole different feature.
So other way around what you are thinking.
Yeah, so usually when you create an image, when the admin configures the stars, he's thinking about performance, right? So if you expose that for the users, the user would need to have an understanding of all their vector and all the columns views. And if you just show them a lot of backends, it would not make sense to need to put the information of this or not.
Well, yeah, and the Cinder model is to usually hide this kind of stuff in the volume type. And it's, I mean, we haven't spelled out too completely what the use cases are here, but I could totally see this aligning with volume types for some uses.
So the two main use cases driving the whole multi-store thing. The first one that has been around for years now and has been discussed that we are finally addressing is a different cost storage for your images. So if you don't care, you might want to drop your image to a slow spinning Rust that has no replication, no security, and it costs very, very little. Or you can have a SSD-backed Ceph cluster that has multiple copies, and you can be accessing images, booting up from them super quickly, or because nobody is sharing that same store. But these two stores might be massively differently priced based on the capacity your images are using. And the second use case that finally has been driving this work to be done is the edge use case, where we want to specify images going to the specific locations and specific sites so that we can avoid streaming the image data over WANs when the image is booted.
And I would say the similar things that have in the past.
Yeah.
And for that, we have a tool that does the optimization that comes with the group.
I mean, the first one definitely aligns with how we use volume types in Cinder. We leave all that up to the admin to give the user some opaque identifier. And
yeah, that's exactly what the store ID, what is the part that is exposed to user from glances. It's literally just a string.
yeah, I'm just trying to figure out if there's actually a value in giving that to the Cinder user versus just stuffing it in the type and letting the admin pick it. Because it all sounds like admin area concerns.
So if you push that to the admin, then you are basically saying that it's admin's job to select what cost level of image store the user should be using.
That's what we do in Cinder now.
You do?
Yeah, that's like the whole premise of how we do volume types in Cinder.
Yeah, it seems like if they care, then the admin would put something in the extra specs to make sure that the image is in the right place. If they don't care, it just uses the defaults. And that is something that really the admin should be the one that controls, I think.
I would think
So if we take two easy use cases for that, let's say the user wants to back up their volume. They go and they pick up, regardless what grade of storage that volume is sitting in.
Mm-hmm.
They might want to drop it just to the cheap image store so that they have somewhere to put it until they can pull it back. It's not time sensitive issue.
Right.
And the same user might want to have image of that same volume on a fast, reliable store so that they can create new volumes or boot it really quickly through Nova. And if you put that to the admin to just decide that, okay, because you are using expensive block storage, you need to always use expensive image store as well. That sounds kind of counterintuitive to me.
That sounds like more
Well,
like something they should be using backup Cinder store than trying to have, creating a whole bunch of images of all kinds of different
Well,
locations.
but I think maybe the way to do this is to go with the volume type first, because it seems like that would make sense to Cinder users anyway,
That would
even if we did
address
eventually,
one
and then if there's a
subject.
demand, and operators say it's a pain in the butt to have all these volume types. then we could go ahead and expose it in the API. At least that would get it in now, to make sure it's being used. in class.
The one,
conflict forever, creating all these volume types.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah, but if you have a complex deployment, I mean, you need to create them because you need them to manage stuff. It just depends on how
well, absolutely, I'm not saying
complicated it
that
is.
it's the wrong way to address it. That's just always been a complaint.
Yeah.
Couldn't we provide a banking option? Because usually the backend is tightly related to the data path. So if you times one backend to a default race backend, each backend could have a default race backend, and then you could set, for example, for this region, I have a backend configured here, and all of these, this backend to use this race backend. And then it would be easier.
Yeah, because if you did it per backend like that, you could get some kind of, location awareness idea in there. Where,
Yeah, that's the.
Can do that with volume types.
well, it depends on how you set them up, but
Yeah. That's the-
I mean, the one,
And then looking at the edge case, your backend at the edge would be the configure to have the same store at the same edge.
Yeah, that would make absolutely sense.
Straightforward.
because that's basically doing it per host instead of per type.
But if that's what you need, you can do that today with, adding this option, you can do that with a volume type setting.
Well, if you want to have separate volume types for separate backends.
Yeah, but if you're trying to say this edge storage backend needs to happen here and be here this.
Well, that's not what I was saying. What I was saying is if you have a volume in a place, you want to pick a glance store that's close to it. You may not have cared where the volume actually is.
we need the placement API.
But you can do
okay.
that. That's all I'm saying. 'Cause we can add some locality information.
I mean, the only thing that stinks about using volume type is if you have an image and you want to change it from using, your bronze glance type to your gold glance type, you have to retype the volume.
Yeah, that is kind of a pain.
It's not,
Because then you end up having to do retypes for stuff that doesn't directly affect anything in Cinder. It's just kind of, I mean, we could make it, allow that, but yeah. The other thing that wasn't clear to me on this, especially thinking about the edge kind of stuff, was is it actually sufficient to say you just want to identify the glance store? Because I was kind of guessing that someone's going to also want to be able to pick different glance services for this and not just stores on the one service you can talk to. And I'm wondering if we're going to implement this and it lets you pick which store. And then as soon as we do it, we're going to have people saying, well, now I want to pick which glance service and which store. And I'm kind of wondering if we should just do both of those together. But I don't know how common use of multiple different glance.
So
services.
all deployments, what I know, are deploying a single instance of glance.
Until the edge, maybe. People are talking about all kind of multi-layered hierarchical topologies of crap now, so I don't know.
Yeah, but
I mean,
at least so far,
Yeah.
I don't know. Actually, I think Starlink is deploying multiple, independent stacks and just doing all kind of wizardry to copy metadata over and replicate data over. But at least what I know on pure OpenStack side deployment plans, all the plans have been that it's a single instance of glance relying on a single database, which is kind of the definition at that point. So if you start having multiple glances, that gets interesting very quickly.
yeah.
And the problem with making this like a dash option when doing a volume to image is we don't normally expose details of the back end of the user.
Well, we've designed everything in Cinder to put stuff like that as an admin concern and not a user concern. So it seems weird to
No,
push the glance part of it to the user.
But how does Cinder user then select what kind of storage they want to use? Do they want to use high performance, expensive storage, or?
Well, the admin creates types like gold, silver, bronze, whatever. And the admin sets up specs that route those to wherever they need to go. But the user doesn't ever see that part.
Yeah.
So the user.
But that's exactly the same what Glance does with the store IDs.
Is it?
Yes.
It's not clear, really.
So the store ID is exactly the same abstraction. It doesn't expose the backend details. It's just a string describing or basically for the admin to name the store what they want to show to the user. It's not exposing that, hey, this is Ceph and this is Ceph and this is Ceph and this is Swift, unless admin decides to name them that way.
Right.
So that's exactly the same abstraction of not exposing the backend details.
Well, I mean, the difference is that in Glance, it's a representation of where it's stored. And in Cinder, it's an abstract
Of
thing
where it's
that-
stored.
No, it's not.
No,
It's an abstract type that could land anywhere depending on what you put in the specs for it.
Yeah.
okay.
It's just a name to the end user.
Yeah, it's way more general than the Glance store ID kind of thing.
Okay.
Image type.
Yeah, I was wondering about that
Oh,
earlier.
jeez.
It does kind of sound like if we want to expose that control completely per image creation, then.
Well, now you need a scheduler too. Now you need a scheduler too.
And placement type, yeah.
Wah, wah, wah.
So what's the consensus? Is it to put it in volume type? Or?
I mean, putting it in the volume type seems like a nice way to start because even if we decide we hate that later, we can undo it.
Right, with that API chamber.
Yeah.
So, quick question about that. Is it how no in Cinder world? So if we start by putting it into volume type and basically have that as a admin decision of sensible default, if there is lots of ask for it, is it something that you guys could consider then having on the client side that it can actually overwrite it? Or is that something that is absolute no on
Well,
Cinder world?
I mean, users can't generally change anything in the types anyway because only admins can.
But he's asking, could they override with the,
Nothing
Oh.
can override the volume type extra specs at volume creation time, or really at any time after you've created the volume.
Right, but when the volumes, when an image is being created from volume, you do allow a specification of container format, disk format, and protected and
Yeah.
visibility.
Well, yeah, but none of those things we're suggesting putting in the volume type, like just the destination.
I don't-
Right, now we're talking about the case where how, would it be possible to override? So what
Which-
I think what everyone's wondering is if we go with the volume type thing to start, or we just stuck with that and we can never have on-demand.
I mean, I wouldn't be
No.
opposed to letting it be overridden from the API.
but Then-
But that would also make it a unique key. And also, if we specify it in the volume type, I'm just sort of wondering, if it's a non-prefixed key, that means that the scheduler has access to it and can not schedule based on it. So how do we bypass that? Because any non-prefixed key, the scheduler will, if the backend is not advertising it, the scheduler won't place it there. Prefix with
I mean, all I can say is that we can figure out what it needs to do and probably make it happen. I don't know.
Well, like make an exception for that particular key.
Well, I'm
So-
trying to figure out if that's really the only one that's like that. I don't know if it is or not.
the problem with letting them override at the command line is now suddenly you have a volume where, or an image where but the type doesn't really matter anymore at that point, does it?
Well, that's why it all comes back to what the actual use case is supposed to be and what,
I was gonna say, because then you have a volume of a type, but the data isn't correct, but that's not true because it's been squeezed into an image and that's what we care about. Okay.
Right.
So I think then the answer is, in the future, if users hate the volume type solution, we could add the option to do it with options on the command line. Yeah, add image create.
Because I kind of like the idea that it's in the volume type, because that gives the operators a way to define a sensible default value. But that's how I see it when it's an operator call, that it's a default value that the user don't need to care about. I'm just wondering how fast users actually start care about it and start requesting like, hey, but I want to make the call where that resource what I'm paying for is going.
I definitely yesterday.
Okay.
It did?
Not this bad. There's a lot of hot air in here.
Or no, we need you to step out.
The other thing I would say about the volume type one is I suspect we actually want it to be a list of store IDs instead of just one that it can pick from. For people who have massive amounts of plant stores and not a ton of volume types.
How would that work?
You can just let it pick one at random if you specify more than one.
Does Glance have that concept?
Glance doesn't have to have that
As long as
concept.
you tell us either 0 or 1.
Cinder can just pick one.
I don't know. It's kind of weird to be random when you get one out of like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm just, okay,
Future enhancement.
yeah. You end up with a guy with 2 volume types and 10 different Glance stores. I don't know how that's gonna work, but
He's gonna have 20 volume types.
I could see.
yeah, and then he's gonna hate us for it.
If we expose that to an end user, then they are gonna come back and say, well, I want to.
Well, the whole point's to not expose it to the end user. That's why it's in the type.
Well, okay, you got there. If we're doing a set, okay, I don't want it randomly selected, I want evenly spread across, or I want do this one until it's full and then do this one. And then we're having image types and the scheduler and
Yeah.
everything like that.
Yeah, it's probably more than we need at this point.
Is this not
Yes, sir.
even image
Right.
created or is it? Can you explain it? Is that information the last story not created option or image created?
Yeah, and then we'll have the image ID and then the leaf row, which is that image, wherever it is.
What is volume depth, it's created, after it's created?
That should kind of be the image.
Yeah. Because at that point, the image has been passed off and doesn't live in our world anymore. It's gone to Glance world.
Mm-hmm. That point, we just track it, and so when you go and delete the image, we have a location record in that database, and we just go and delete it from the backend.
We'll also have to write some code in the extra spec diff stuff that's used to determine if a migration needs to happen to ignore this field, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Or the opposite of that, depends on what the use case is.
Migration. Well, no. Since it doesn't really affect if they're migrating it. I mean, retype, it's a no-op because you change things when you retype. But you're saying if you migrate from one volume type. No, wait,
I don't know.
I don't know what you're saying.
We can figure it out when we code it.
Okay. Ship it.
Right, so I'll take it to, I'll work with Abhishek to update the spec, is basically what we discussed here.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, let's drop that down. Pick up once. My thing is really not it.
Okay.
Next.
Well then, so I have a customer use case that I'd like to, essentially that I'd like to support with a little bit more grace. Essentially what this particular customer is doing is they have a glance store. And I have a glance store driver. It's not merged upstream, but it's functional and it complies to the interface. And so essentially what it allows me to do is they upload their image to Glance. I store it in my Glance store. It's on our backend. And I do fast clones using the Cinder clone image function because it's already stored as a volume, one way from Glance to.
You've angered the gods. Stop.
From Glance to Cinder, because on our side it's just a instantaneous clone. So that's perfect, works wonderfully. However, they also do modifications to their image, and then they want to create, or to the volume, and then want to create a new image. And so that hits the copy in volume to image API. And so far, I have not found any prior art or any recommended way of skipping the host-assisted copy into an image because it's just going back into my store. And so since it's guaranteed to be on the same backend, although there are possibly ways that it could not be on that backend, like if we get multi-backend support and things like that. And I'd like to essentially just be able to tell my Glance store driver, just do another fast clone. But I need the ability to fall back to the old behavior if for some reason it's not accessible, or if the only way to get it into the store is via host-assisted copy. But I haven't found any recommended mechanism for that, because at least in Cinder, the default implementation of copy image to volume does an attachment, and then hands that off to Glance as a file object for the Glance store to copy from into its image, or however it decides to implement it. And so I'm essentially looking for what I can do, like maybe an annotation that I can make that essentially will let my driver know, oh, hey, this is something that you could fast clone. And so you can skip this whole host assisted thing. And then if it can't, then it can fail back and then allow Cinder to use its default implementation and then do a host assisted copy. And so it would probably be pretty easy for me to just annotate one of the objects that's passed in, but I would like maybe a little bit more of an official way, and also something that allows me to fall back to the original behavior, if that makes sense.
You're free that your function, your assistant function cannot do, you don't have a way to not fail the version. So receive a image volume call and you are able to do it, you can do it in your record. You cannot fail in the schedule program.
Yeah, essentially I would want it to retry if it fails and fall back to the attachment and then passing in the file object and then just have it do its normal behavior. Because there's no guarantee that, so if I overwrite it in my driver and I don't do the attachment and I pass it in there and say, for instance, this Glance store is not mine, then I need it to fail in some way that it can pass it back to Cinder. I can do the attachment and then send it back to it.
So you're trying to optimize the downloading the image to Cinder?
No. That one is already optimized.
Okay.
This is the other way, the uploading an image into Glance, or sorry, volume into Glance.
Doesn't the Ceph driver do this?
Ceph, well, so from what I understand, Ceph does the fast clone into a volume, but I don't think it does the other way.
I'm confused. The code that does create the image from the bottom does check to see if it can do. Let's go back. Check to see if it can do it.
So basically, you
Yeah,
would
it
like
does
to do
look like
something
it.
similar what Nova does with Ceph backend, where Nova actually makes the clone, copy of write clone, and then it just goes and pushes the location through the locations API to Glance. So it doesn't stream the data through the Glance service at all.
Yes, and
So-
I'm trying to bypass completely.
Yeah.
the-
So
the stream.
basically what you really want to do is your Cinder driver to make that clone, get the location for that.
Uh-huh.
And probably, so at that point you already know that if you couldn't, if it's not on the Glance store, you just don't clone it and you run the normal code path.
Mhm.
And if it is right place, your Cinder driver makes a clone, and at that point you just shoot an API call to Glance to put the location in the Glance database, which will turn the image active.
Okay, so yeah, I haven't found any like documentation for how this.
There is none
Yeah.
because and enabling the locations API is not a good thing. It opens quite a kind of worm, so security
Well,
wise.
so one way that I was thinking of not doing it with the locations API is instead, just passing in an annotated object. My Glance store driver will know, oh, this thing is annotated. If it has this particular attribute, that's the name on the back end. It checks to make sure that that exists, and if it does, it makes a clone so that it's separate from the volume side of things, and then just essentially returns because it's already done.
Probably you need to carry your own internal patch for this anyways.
Yeah.
So probably your easiest way to do that then is that you put a wrapper on the call that actually make the host that triggers the host assisted copy to image, and you try to do that your call directly first, and you catch that, and if you get exception at that point you just pass the call down to the host assisted function and let it run it through.
I see. Oh,
Well-
okay. So essentially, I pass it. I don't do the volume attachment. I call the image upload, or sorry. Well, so if we actually look at the default implementation of a copy image to volume, or sorry, copy volume to image. One of the things I was looking at is essentially doing exactly that. I was just unsure of if I call image service.update with things that it's not necessarily expecting. So what things can I pass to it and have it essentially be like, just hand it off to the Glance driver and let it do its thing. Or like, I'm not sure what sort of validation goes on with the update call.
So
So it would basically just be the schema validation. So
Schema
whatever's in the image schema. And then you have the custom properties that are just the values are just strings.
what was the bit about carrying a custom patch for it?
So if he wants to, for his own private backend system to do
Yeah,
this.
So this is
my-
definitely not.
My idea, I haven't actually tested this yet, but.
It's not gonna
I
be for
essentially
his,
get
'cause
the
whatever he
image
does,
ID.
we need to
This
do the
is
same
just
thing for
copy
stuff.
image to volume and send it. It calls the image service with update.
Because it's missing
I
the same
annotate,
optimization.
I essentially annotate this dictionary right here and I put, the Terra ID in it. And then
But
if
the
any
thing is,
exception
Ceph
occurs at
driver in
all,
Glance
then I'm falling back to
does not
the
do any
normal
cloning.
implementation of.
Well, then we
attachment.
can teach
And
it
it
to
will
do that.
never do that.
Or we decide it needs to do
Then
that.
I'm returning from this point because it's already, I'm assuming that it's in the image service, but I'm not sure. I haven't followed the entire code path for image service.update, and so I'm not sure what can happen here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just calling a Glance update. So you can pass it. Oh, from the client side, but yeah, I think that would.
Because I think this will be the simplest implementation of it because it does have the failback, essentially the failback, if any exception occurs. But I don't know what what state I could be leaving if an exception occurs, because I want to be able to clean up whatever happened before.
Right.
You can probably leave an image just in queue status. So it'll have whatever you bring to it, when you create the image to get the image ID. And that's
Is there any way to clear out that, if on a failed update?
it depends on which ones. I mean, if it's still queued, you can set the location at that point.
Well, I guess if you call image service.update, can you bind even on an, well, because if there's an exception, there's nothing to bind to that's being returned. Because I would assume that image service.update returns an object that I could then use for cleanup purposes. But if there's an exception, that binding never occurs. So I don't know how to get a handle on that for cleanup, during the exception case. Because my other idea was to write some real convoluted config setup code that will disable this if I don't detect that the glance store is configured, and it's fine.
So you're sending this to your last week?
Yeah.
We should talk about this after.
Okay, gotcha. We're getting into implementation details.
Well, so one thing I was pointing out is that whatever you do for this, we need to do the same thing for set.
Oh, yeah.
So it's hopefully can be shared as some of the infrastructure for how we end up doing this.
Absolutely. One of my goals here in the next couple of weeks is to actually merge my glance store driver upstream. So,
Cool.
I mean, all of this stuff is on our GitHub, like on the Doterra GitHub.
Yeah.
Not this particular thing because I'm still, trying to figure it out.
Like what Ernest said, Notebook can do the stuff back end, can do the fast copy.
Mhm.
So there's code there to look at.
Gotcha. I was hoping not to touch anything with Nova.
We are just look, yeah.
Okay. Just because the moment Nova comes into the picture, things get way more complicated. Yeah, go away and, especially because a lot of the stuff with Ceph it's Ceph. There's a lot of custom code for it. Trying to avoid. That's all I have.
All right, the next thing I have is really just Cinder, it's not a flex thing.
Cool. We go ahead on our list then. Thanks, guys.
See you
All
later.
right, thanks for stopping by.
Absolutely.
See you guys later.
Call us if you need us.
What's the glance signal?
You yell at Brian.
Yeah. You throw small sharp objects towards Brian.
Brian, call glance. Calling my aunts. All right.
All right, so this one, I was looking at some bugs and some patches that have shown up, and I think we need to get a little more clear about how we're handling properties going to images. So there's a Etherpad link, if you take it. So at the top, I think there are 4 pieces of information we want to track about images, and we need to separate them out because, well, let me go through it real fast. So we've got the image properties that are present when we create a volume from an image. So we store a bunch of the properties, and that's good, so you know right where the volume came from. We also put some metadata about how Cinder has handled the volume, handled the image. So for instance, now you can set that, there's a config setting to enable signature verification. And on the glance side, image signature verification is a per user thing. So it's not going to be for the whole site. But since it's a per service option in Cinder, what happens is images that aren't, so most images are not going to have the extra metadata on them that will trigger signature validation. So they'll wind up with it's signature verified false. And then the ones that do have it and pass will say signature verified true. So that's not really an image property because it's more that we're saying that the thing that got transferred to us actually passed this image signature verification. But you know. And then the other one is sometimes we want Cinder to store properties on images that are created from a volume. So the example is the Cinder encryption key ID needs to go on the volume. And then there are probably some properties that Cinder that Cinder wants to keep about images, but should not actually go onto an image. So I'm thinking of for things like the image signature validation metadata. Those will get copied into what we're keeping track of for the image. And then when we create a volume from an image, what we do is if the volume is when we're creating an image from a volume that was previously created from an image, we migrate a lot of the existing image metadata onto the new image because that makes sense that a lot of that stuff would go together. But the image signature validation stuff should not go because those values are most likely going to be incorrect for the new image. And then if you try to build a volume from that image, it's going to crack. And we've seen the same thing. One of the bugs listed there is that this is happening currently for the for the signature verified, is that it's coming, well, that's a different issue, I guess. But it's a similar kind of thing.
Signature in the first image. So you have an image with a signature,
Right.
then create a volume, and then create another image.
Right.
Who creates the first signature?
It's up to the user to
You have to go
put.
and create.
So yeah, the user on the glance side has to handle that on their own when they upload the image. So they've verified it and they've put the key in Barbican so that they can retrieve the signature. And then on glance they put I think the signature hash and also the algorithm, and then that's how Cinder knows what to do when it wants to verify it on the download. So Nova has so the other thing is that there are several places where we handle the image metadata in Cinder. So we have a translate, and each of them handles it slightly differently. So we have a translate to glance, translate from glance, and we have a capture image metadata and a get image metadata. And the capture is the one that takes image metadata and puts it onto the volume in the, what's it called? The volume image metadata field. And then the other one goes the other way, grabs stuff out of the volume image metadata if it exists, and then hands that over to glance eventually. But each of those does some filtering. So I guess what I want to do is get a sense of, I should probably put a spec together for this, but I think Nova has this property called non-inheritable image properties. And because what Nova does when you take a snapshot of an instance is it puts a bunch of metadata on there, and it always keeps track of the metadata that was on the original image that the instance was booted from, and it will propagate that over to the snapshot, except if you put the metadata in this list and then it ignores those. So we could do that kind of thing to eliminate the image signature verification things if we wanted to. Or on the other hand, we could just not copy those over. I mean, we could do some filtering and say there's specific things we don't want to look for when we're pulling stuff down and saving it as part of the volume image metadata in the first place. But I don't know how exactly people feel about this.
You're doing the same thing, just different ways.
Yeah, exactly. So it depends on how much information we want to keep about, I mean, it seems to make sense to keep a lot of information about the image that a volume was originally created from, because that stuff, some of the stuff is mutable in glance, and an owner can change that if they want to. And it might be good to have a record of everything. Now, they can't change things like the checksum or the hash value or things like that. But that's something to keep in mind. So
I can see. The way it seems like it's just more a cosmetic way of doing it. It's better to have a blacklist of the things that you're not copying. Just keep your blacklist.
right. So, and I guess the other thing is the way we're handling some of the image properties is by keeping a list of ones we want to pay attention to. We should probably find out which ones are read-only from the schema. to separate them out. Because if you try to update an image with properties that plants will not allow you to mutate, then that operation fails. So right now we're filtering some things out, but we're sort of doing it by hand instead of relying on how they're annotated in the image schema. So what's happening now in the code is we pass around an image metadata object that's got a bunch of fields, but it also has a properties field that's a dict of stuff. And that's based on, I think, the V1 image model, and Glance doesn't really use that anymore.
Yeah, I think the theory in Cinder was that was like a Glance construct that we were trying to maintain.
Yeah, no, so I would like to get rid of that entirely and just have, image metadata that we work with. Because what's happening with the properties thing is some of those are overwriting. Well, it depends on where you look and how people are handling this. So for this encryption key, it's being explicitly handled in several different places.
Right.
But I'm not convinced that the old one in the properties isn't overwriting the one that gets set. But I'm not sure where. I've got to verify that.
I don't know, but thinking about the signature verified case, it seems to me that needs to just get put in a different bucket altogether and not crammed into the metadata.
Yeah,
because it's not image metadata. It's like the state of stuff in Cinder.
Right. So that's, yeah, I don't know how. So I mean, in with the volume image metadata, we could put like a dict of, Cinder service stuff if we need to.
Well, that's what
Or
it
just
seems
hide
like. I mean,
completely.
it seems to me like we need one dict of the stuff that is actually on the image in Glance, and then we need another bucket for all the stuff that Cinder is actually modifying and poking and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we could do that. Right now, the volume image metadata is stored in there's a specific table.
Well, and I mean, it's like the signature verified field. I mean, that could go in like volume admin metadata. Like you don't even have to make a new place for that one.
Okay.
I mean, that's stuff that's like already got a place in Cinder to keep track of details like that. Some of the other ones, I'm not sure if that's the case, but for that one in particular, I think we already would have a place to put it.
So that would, okay. So then I think we probably still want the blacklist of image properties we do not want to write. Because we do want to keep track of them, I think.
So what's in that list?
It would be, right now, it would be the 4 image signature fields.
Oh, yeah.
And then anything like that, it could, probably, the reason it's configurable in Nova is that it may be operator specific.
Well, for the signature thing, I mean, you could, for somebody who wants to audit it later or something, you could move those over to wherever we move signature verified to, just as a record if it was verified with this particular signature.
It's possible.
Because I think once we get the, what was it, the cert-based checksum validation that was, I think, still in progress, some of that might be a little more complicated, and we might need records of like what happened. But I don't know. I don't know where that work is right now.
And I guess the other thing is, Nova also puts an instance UUID on a snapshot, and we aren't doing that with, I don't know if we want it might make sense to put the Cinder volume ID of the volume that an image was created from, just to make it easier to track.
We don't do that already.
I don't think so.
I think I would have guessed that we did, but I'm not sure. If we don't, then yeah, we should probably do that.
Yeah, at least it doesn't happen in current dev stack.
Volume being deleted, is there some value to having that?
I mean, is there value in having the field that tells us what image a volume was created from?
Yes.
It's the same case. I mean,
The
solid fiber driver actually creates a little cache. So if somebody asks the same image over and over,
Oh.
we don't have to do copies, we immediately clone it much faster.
Good song.
All right. I guess what I'll do is I'll put together a spec for reworking some of this. And then we can argue about it. Just want to make sure it was not a stupid idea.
I mean, it makes sense to me.
All right, thanks.
So basically, you're gonna put a spec together, and we'll review it and figure out what we do and don't want to do.
Yeah,
I mean, I think you've probably got the most input on it anyway, so.
yeah, I'll put it together. See how
And I
we
guess
figure this
it
out.
would be good to eyeball if there's places that we can rearrange where we manipulate the encryption keys. But I think it's not obvious to me where we would move any of them.
Right.
So I don't know. We can look at that and see if there's something to improve. But off the top of my head, I'm not really sure how to make that much better.
Yeah, with that, I think it's mainly a matter of,
I mean, they're pretty much
yeah,
changed and manipulated wherever in the pipeline we would like needed to do that.
yeah, I just want to make sure it's not overwritten at some point, the properties dict that's hanging off the image metadata, it's merged in, and it's a dict update, so it would overwrite the previous one that's there.
I see.
And I'm worried because since we're currently just cloning, it's possible you might have the wrong key, and since Glance isn't deleting it, we wouldn't know.
All right. Or REIT. Next topic. We still don't have,
Oh, he said you'd show up if he's not around, but
okay.
that's fine.
Would you move on?
Hmm?
Or were we waiting for somebody for that?
Well, Gotham just wanted to listen in on it.
Oh.
He'll probably show up at some point.
All right. So everybody okay with just kind of muscling through till the end here? Get done a little early, go take a nap before the events this evening. Okay, capabilities reporting update. Tell me about your capabilities. Can you report them?
I don't know. I mean, people are telling me that everything already works, so I'm not sure where we want to start with this.
So, well, it's unfortunate Walt's not here. We should have done it this morning. So Walt started a lot of this work back in his HP days, or his team did. So there are patches out there for it that it would be good for us to review and start working on seeing if we can still merge them. So I think it's just a matter of getting it done.
Do we have any idea what it is we want to get done? Well, I mean,
We want to
I-
sort of report what actual capabilities the backends can
Yeah.
capable of, and not just.
So that's easy to fix because that doesn't require any like infrastructure changes. That's just deleting some of the default ones and adding things to drivers.
Right.
So that's pretty easy, I think. I mean, if people agree that the default list doesn't really seem to make sense to report.
Eric, I didn't get a chance really to go through the spec that you put up, but is there something in there that the current framework doesn't allow that you think is important?
So there was something that I was trying to figure out was important. In the case that I was trying to think through is the current interface. I think I'm starting to wonder if this is true after some patch I was reading earlier today. The current interface, if you call get capabilities, will report that capabilities exist, but you don't get any info on whether the backend actually supports them or not. It just gives you info on whether the backend knows that it's a capability. And so depending on how people want to use these, you could kind of end up with odd things because basically the current method treats lack of a capability being reported as you can't filter on it or anything. I don't think. I'm not actually sure if that's true anymore.
So those are all reported by backends, but what do you mean that they
What are
report something that they don't know? They can.
What are all reported?
Huh?
What are reported by backends?
The capabilities, I'm just reading is this a spec, backend capabilities, is your spec?
Yeah.
There's
So
a framework in place for drivers to be able to add capabilities to be reported, but right now it looks like only forked versions of Matt's driver do that.
yeah, and it's easy to fill in the ones that are missing, but the part that wasn't clear to me was whether we should also be reporting not that the driver knows that a capability exists, but also whether it actually is true or false or has a number or whatever.
Why would we not report that?
Well, we don't report that now because it's not part of the API.
I think the idea now is that if it's not reported, then it's easy to filter on it not being something that's capable of, right?
Well, the problem is it's not though. That's the thing, because you can't go write an extra spec that says compression equals false, because then drivers that didn't code in compression as false will not get scheduled. And so I was trying to figure out what to do in that direction.
Did we talk at some point, not capabilities, but for drivers to be able to report what extra specs they recognize?
I thought that was the capabilities thing.
Yeah, I think it is.
I thought it was slightly different in that you want to say if just functionality wise, whether they're capable or not, but then for an admin to be able to query and knows the actual syntax to put into the extra spec of whatever vendors. Is that your fork driver?
Good. This is so this is the output for get capabilities when you fill out the function.
It's big.
Yeah. I mean it's.
Can you paste something that you've had from that?
Yeah. Well.
So it is your fork driver. So in your implementation, are you putting in the actual extra spec keys that your driver pays attention to?
Yeah. So it says right here, backend properties. DF bandwidth per gigabyte.
Yeah.
Right, and all of those are listed in addition to the stuff that's based on volume stats up here. So,
given that no one has actually implemented this, we probably don't have documentation. But if we do have documentation, have we documented that that's the way they expect it to happen?
it's documented in the function. I don't know.
Given that we don't have documentation on that.
Yeah. So I mean, that was enough for me.
So out of curiosity, how does this work right now? Like, is there an API call alternate all the way to the backend, or is it just coming up in the scheduler?
So you can call get capabilities and you call it with the argument of a host/Cinder backend,
Okay,
and it gives you the ones for that.
and it's coming, and this information is coming from the scheduler.
How does it actually get there?
No, this information is coming from the driver itself.
Okay,
Yeah, because the driver is reporting it, and if that driver happens to implement this function. So during driver initialization, init vendor capabilities is called along with the net standard capabilities right before it. And then that is all, I don't know where it actually stores it, probably just in a memory object. And
It's
then,
the scheduler.
I think it's in the scheduler.
or in the scheduler, yeah, and then that is what's queried by the capabilities.
Right now, if someone actually used it, they can put any freeform capability they want for their driver.
Yeah.
But that's the idea, yeah.
Well, is that the idea, or is the idea that drivers are actually going to report the extra specs that they look at?
Well, I think the drivers should report the extra specs that they support
So
to make it useful.
The way to make it useful to me in more than just a front end sort of visual way is I actually use init vendor capabilities to set the defaults for all of these values. So it not only tells you the default in here, but it also sets the default in my driver. And so I always call into that default dictionary that it's setting, oh, this is what I should use if the volume type doesn't have this key. Every volume type for me has all of these keys.
I didn't
It's
follow
just
that at
if
all.
they didn't specify it, I use this default value.
That makes sense.
And so it's not only documented, it's also enforced.
Oh, look at your screen.
Matt, is there a reason you haven't pushed that up?
I maintain 6 or 7 different plugins and I just don't have
The
the time.
default is part of what I had in my spec about reporting values that we don't do now, I think.
so you have a type, you have.
Yeah, so I have a default, I have the description, I have the minimum value allowed, and then the title for it. I mean, obviously this formatting can be fixed, but if you actually look at the implementation of it, it's down here. So I implement init vendor properties, and this was just copy pasted from the implementation in Cinder Volume Driver. And then I do a set property for each of the properties that I support. And all of them will be prefixed with DF. And if you actually go back here and look at this again, you'll see that it has even the standard ones down here at the bottom, compression, loss, and yeah. But everything else is one of mine.
So default shows up there, even though that's.
Well, you set default in the in here. So yeah, see default equals, and this is the dictionary that I'm storing my defaults in.
Right.
And it also says the type of thing that it accepts, like this one's a Boolean, this is a string.
Right.
But this just like scheduler stats currently does not have like a standard schema. It's whatever keys the driver is making up.
I think that the set property function is what defines what you can pass.
It has a standard infrastructure to report whatever you want to report.
Okay, but does the volume manager say these are the only keys I can accept from it?
No,
No,
you pretty much pass up whatever you want.
because the consumer would like to see some sort of consistency, right? If I say.
Yeah, there's not any to be found. That's the whole thing. But that was what we went through with this originally.
Yeah.
But there's almost nothing that's actually consistent across all the drivers to use. So it doesn't really get you a whole lot.
I think the standard ones were supposed to be that common set of consistent ones.
How many drivers implement compression? Almost none, as far as I know.
Well, it depends on your definition of compression.
Yeah.
Like,
I'd say
Something that Cinder cares about from the volume type.
well, yeah.
I mean,
Well, because my backend, it's not a configurable on a volume level, it's configurable on a whole cluster level. So it doesn't matter what you set in the volume or even in the type of volume.
yeah, at least 50% of our drivers do some sort of compression, whether it's for volume or
do people write extra specs to do anything with that?
I ignore the compression extra spec.
just because there's nothing I can do about it.
But I would use it to take provisioning to your backend or away from your backend.
Well, compression is always an issue, so.
So you would say true, and so if I don't want compression,
It's
I'm not
you're
running your
gonna-
backend.
Yes, exactly.
That's good.
So what we've got, is it easy for the operator to write specs, the information there?
Yeah, super easy. I mean, and if anyone wants to look at this code, it's on our GitHub, just dayterra/cinder. Easy to use.
Cinder dash driver.
Yes, it is. And it's in the Dayterra iSchedule.py file.
It seems like we need to document how we expect driver maintainers to use this and actually get some people using it.
Yeah.
It's been there since 2015.
I may have had this since November of 2016.
So given what we have out there and what we've found, do we still need Eric to write a spec for this stuff?
Sounds more to me like Doxy.
Well, I'm still skeptical about some of these current ones being reasonable.
Maybe the old spec file by HP is, looks like they're just trying to report extra specs. Yeah, so currently it's just reporting the common capabilities. They want to add that, so all the extra specs are reported as well. That's, at least that's the first spec I see from HP that got merged. So their first specs just say, okay, trying to display all of those in Horizon. The 127646, that one.
So why is QoS one of the default ones we report?
Yeah, that's a common one actually.
Well, I mean, common is one thing. Why is it
So-
reported for
no, they
everything?
report false, but default is false. But your driver supports it, you just set it to
Well,
true.
no, by default, it's Boolean. It's not anything. It just says you have a QoS
Default is
property.
false. Default is false. So all
The capabilities API just says QoS Boolean. That's it.
Yeah, but when you get
Way
it,
more
you
than
say
just a
false.
Boolean.
This is why I'm asking why this is here. This makes no sense.
Yeah,
By
I've
default
never
it's
understood
false.
most of the default ones.
So I think all the common capabilities are like that. So if you don't report.
But my
it,
entire
it's
argument
like-
is the common capabilities make no sense. That's what I keep
Why-
saying.
Why it doesn't make sense?
Because
There's
why, what
default.
does QoS being here get anybody? What does it achieve? I can't tell that it does anything useful.
Well, it is used basically only if you implement that feature, you set that to true. Otherwise, your driver.
Well, if you implemented
your
it, you can
driver
put it in your
just report that
driver
to false.
instead of
The
having it
default is
in the
false.
default list.
So if
Or
you
Yeah, I agree.
implemented it, you need more specs for the QoS settings to be set, right?
The default is not false. The default is QoS is a property that we know about because there's no
QoS
value attached to it in
Well,
the API.
QoS, whether you enable it or not, if it's enabled, the scheduler will go handle that. And you, of course, every driver has its own keys, right? That part is different. But there is a common capability whether this is true or false. So this is similar to, maybe not completely similar, like all the other capabilities, like the.
Has
consistent-
anybody ever written a volume type with an extra spec that says QoS equals true?
This is a common capability, right? But under each driver, when you implement
This
this one,
is-
you have your own keys.
Right, and you can
Right.
go do that without this being reported for every Cinder
No, I think this
installation.
is to tell the scheduler whether to handle it or not.
If it is,
Scheduler
it doesn't
checks
say
that.
anything about that.
The scheduler checks that because if it's in extra specs, I think it depends on whether there's a scope key and a non-scoped key. So if it's, I think it's a non-scoped scheduler will actually filter that out. But if it's scoped, then it's going to skip it. So that's for the extra.
Yeah, but almost always for every backend, you can't just say, oh, Quas is enabled or Quas is not enabled. You have to say, oh, Quas is enabled with these settings. And those settings would have to be set regardless of whether or not the QoS true or false
Right,
is
but
set.
if you don't have that, then scheduler is not going to handle it. I mean.
Well, that sounds
I
like
think
we
the
just
whole-
need to fix the scheduler.
No,
Yeah.
it has to do with the scheduler. All of this are, if you look at the scheduler code, it actually look at those keys.
It sounds like there's a big interaction between the capabilities stuff that's reported as an end user feature via get capabilities, which was intended to be something to help admins, versus how all this stuff interacts in the scheduler and how drivers do it.
I think the get capability was added later. That one is basically
Yeah,
just a
and I think it was
tell-
added and nobody
Uh-huh.
thought through how this was supposed to work. And now we have a bunch of stuff that kind of overlaps, but nobody's sure what the actual functionality is supposed to be anymore. Because the whole point of this API is that it's an end user thing to help people figure out how to write extra specs, as far as I can tell. That's the only use case I've been able to define that actually seems to make sense.
I can give you some use cases because I see something similar in
That is
but that's not what this API is solving, but I just wanted to discuss the use case.
I mean, it's worthwhile, but I do want to.
So if we actually display something like this, do we need to close this down so it's only an admin API?
I think it's already on the
There is
admin.
admin.
It should be.
Get closes
Yeah,
admin.
because the whole purpose of it is to help admins write specs and stuff.
And it's already not super user friendly because you have to be able to put it back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You always look at the logs.
well, I mean, sure, but
To me, QoS is almost goes to property type. because
well, QoS is,
QoS, but it's, you define what QoS values you want, how much IO, how much.
I doubt that QoS for this case works right anyway, because I think it assumes back-end QoS only and not front-end QoS.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing doesn't have any coherency anyway, if you're using front-end QoS. So it's, again, I don't know why it's here. I think we should delete it, which is what I keep saying.
The QoS feature will not work anymore.
We can fix the scheduler. The scheduler should not be tied to the end user capabilities API. That's not how things are supposed to be
Yeah,
arranged.
that's how the filter scheduler is designed.
Well, we
that
can
way.
fix the scheduler to do what we need it to do. But
Shing, you're just saying this is just a capability that the driver is reporting today, and if somebody's using it in the volume time, it's this thing. But I think to get QoS enabled at all on a volume, you need more extra specs. So this is
Right.
just another thing that somebody has to set, saying QoS equals true, and then here is another bunch of extra specs to actually do the QoS for what I want.
No, but those are for the drivers to use. So all the
But
extra
what
stuff
does the
are handled by
scheduler do
driver.
whether or not QoS is enabled?
No, so whether QoS is enabled, whether that is to tell the scheduler whether to handle QoS or not. But all the other things specified in your volume types, in the extra specs for QoS, those are drivers going to handle that because every driver has its own
Yep.
definition of that. Yeah.
Yeah, so and
But-
all of those are implemented as scoped extra specs. So the scheduler just says, I don't know what you're talking about, pass it on to the driver, right?
Right. Yeah.
To go implement this stuff. So probably this is just why do we even need another capability that says QoS?
it looks to me like the scheduler
Well,
looks
the
at
QoS
QoS
that we do-
specs anyway. I don't think it even looks at this. I think it looks at whether you've defined a QoS spec, which has nothing to do with this. All this is doing is outputting information that may or may not mean
Yeah, the
anything.
capability is different. That's a different API that got added to just to make it more user friendly or something like that. But the scheduler design that was in there since day one, I think we got that scheduler logic from Nova. So all the keys are set in this certain way.
I don't see anywhere in the scheduler code that looks for a field called QoS. I see a bunch looking for QoS specs.
QoS support.
Yeah, QoS support is what I see.
The original spec from Liberty is pretty much what we're saying now should be. Yeah, so the use case, as an operator, I want to get a list of capabilities from my deployed storage backends in Cinder. With these capabilities, I have keys and possible values that can be used with volume types extra specs.
Oh, so there's actually a ton of drivers that report a key called QoS support, which means
Yeah,
that the
that's
default
that's
one,
the key, yeah, that's the
well,
one.
this
that is-
API has one called QoS that apparently is output, even though it's not used by anybody.
Is there another QoS key? QoS port is the key that is used by the scheduler.
So
Right.
technically, if you use it, you're.
So if you run get capabilities, it says there's a key called QoS that no one cares about or uses for anything.
Yeah, they should be reporting the extra spec keys. They're not actually using that driver, they're using that one.
Well,
It does actually talk about QoS and that there is a set of well-defined keys that just report true or false. In the case where the device does support it and it can be configured, option keys are listed under the options portion.
Yeah, that's the QoS support field, I think.
Yeah, if it's not an actual extra spec key, that's strange to me that you can still report that.
Well, a lot
Unless-
about this is strange. I mean,
Well, it does categorize it, so QoS as a category, and then under that, options, then you can find out, so it's like a two-level, is QoS supported, and then what are the extra steps that I can set for that?
so, I mean, it sounds like we could get wrapped around these 3 default properties. And this is actually where everything fell apart the last time we tried to fix this.
Oh, I wanted to do something I think they added at some point, trying to standardize the name, I remember.
Yeah, and this,
Like was the,
that's what
yeah.
made everything fall apart.
but then. yeah.
Because nobody could agree on names and it was vendor specific and blah, blah, blah. I think maybe the better way forward is to look at what Matt's done and implement it for LVM and Ceph
which was part 2 of what I wrote in the spec.
and
And
NFS.
part 1 was throw out the standard properties, which I still seems to be what we should do.
I agree if we can agree on it.
People keep not agreeing on it, but I've yet to hear why we want this. People keep saying we want it, but I'm still
'Cause
not
thin-
hearing.
Thin provisioning is done per driver, right? Not every driver has it. Compression,
Those also
Yeah, I
handled by
mean,
the
isn't the
scheduler.
provisioning different? Because the scheduler has logic for it.
Yeah, the thin provisioning one's kind of a weird one, because the scheduler does all kind of stuff with that, but
Compression deduplication still doesn't make sense for common capabilities because
I don't think
Nothing is
there's
scheduled.
any handling of that compression at all.
Now,
So-
the computer is the backend that you don't want. You want.
yeah, I think that was just the reasoning.
That's right.
Yeah, that was the reasoning, I think. It was just a bunch of backends that can do compression as soon as you say compression through. So then why have different keys for which?
so if they report from the driver that they care about the compression field, we can delete this one and the right thing will be there.
Yeah,
I mean, this,
That one was added as a new one. I don't think there was any handling schedule. You're doing my compression, right?
the
Yeah, that's a new
scheduler
one.
better
There's no
not be
handling.
doing.
But for others, like the theme provisioning,
and the provision.
or consistency groups, and all of those are handled by the scheduler.
So you would
But they're
still
not listed here.
Mhm.
That the schedulers are doing something about.
They're not listed in the default capabilities group though.
Maybe,
So why do these have to
but
be
that's
here?
not half of
But
these.
I think that one was they added later, but I don't think anyone did anything to it other than just list those names there,
Okay,
like those, the common property.
Also, that's an implementation detail of how the code is written currently, and
I think they were
not
trying to just
anything
standardize
to do with the
name,
design of the API.
but then.
yeah, which
I-
we never
so
landed
There
on.
might be some redundant ones, it's possible.
Okay, delete these.
So,
Yeah, that's what I've been saying.
Okay, delete them. Let's stop bike shedding on this. Let's,
I'm not sure it's bike shedding. I think the problem is nobody's sure how this whole system works.
well, but I mean,
So we believe that this
We
generic
believe-
set that is in the current get capabilities response
Okay,
is
wait
pretty
a second,
useless.
which one are you trying to delete?
Not according to the spec. If you read the spec, there was logic behind why they did it that way.
Okay.
And the
Okay.
example they give
Well-
actually is logic.
Well, we can write a new spec with whatever logic we need to write. I mean, what's the explanation?
There is some reason for the way it is now. and-
I have yet to hear a reason that anybody thinks compression should always be reported as a capability that shows up. Why do we want
I
that?
think compression should be one. There's no.
I don't
we
see
have
why we
any
want
handling
that.
for that. So.
QoS then shouldn't
Well,
either.
QoS is already implemented, that's the thing.
Why?
No, but
According to
so
this-
is compression.
Sure.
No, it's already, okay.
Which spec are you
So
looking at?
I think that,
Sean?
I linked to it in the Etherpad and on the IRC. But
but the QoS support, that key is already handled by the scheduler. But if there's a second key called QoS, I think that one is probably not used by anyone.
If the scheduler is
Scheduler has nothing to do with what this is
Right.
reporting the capabilities, that's it,
Mhm.
Yeah,
not functionality at all.
and I think we can't agree on what default capabilities are. It's blocking us from making the product better. If we can report what all the capabilities are for a particular backend, that's really what the end user is going to care about, so that's what we should do. Anybody disagree with that statement?
No, and the scope of this API is to help admins figure out what keys to put in. that one.
Exactly.
So the example for compression or for QoS is, it's actually a grouping of the keys that are relevant if you want QoS.
Oh, so it's not a boolean.
There's one of the
it
options.
says
under
it's a
it.
Boolean.
One of the options under it is whether you can do QoS true, whether you can do QoS false. And then to set that, if it is true, here are the vendor extra spec keys that you need to set to actually enable QoS.
But like I said, when you consider that we support front-end QoS, I think this is probably broken anyway, even if it does what it says it does there.
Yeah, oh, okay. Back in, maybe QoS was a bad name and it should have been back in QoS?
Yeah, but then the question is,
You don't need a boolean at all, because there's gonna be the other keys.
Well, no, I think this is, one reason to use this output is to generate a user interface.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why some of these generic things would be the headings, and you would either like not have anything underneath it. So I think it may make sense to have some of these generic groupings in there if that's the point. of-
there's no grouping that's output right now.
Well,
no
because
one's
nobody
consuming this
implemented it.
List capabilities or doing anything with it. It is grouping. Yeah, there's nothing out there because no one actually reports their capabilities, but that is the reason why there's those standard capabilities. And they are a group where you can say, these are my extra spec keys that need to be set to enable that group of functionality.
So for Matt's driver, do you have all these things that were prefixed with D whatever?
Yeah.
So do those show up in a group?
In a group, what do you mean?
No, vendor things, as the spec is written, vendor things are on their own. Unless the vendor.
The spec shows the vendors grouped in this spec that I'm looking at right now. It shows you run capabilities list,
Yeah,
which is not a command that exists.
If the vendor says that these extra specs of mine, specific to my driver, are relevant to what you have to do to enable QoS.
I'm not talking about QoS, I'm talking about the ones below that. But what I'm trying to ask Matt is, did you see anything about making a group?
I mean, The
How do you
The
even
doc
do that?
string the doc string for init vendor properties is everything that I know about it.
Okay.
No, if you did make a group, to answer your question, Rick,
I'm just trying to figure out if
it
you
would fail
actually,
the capabilities scheduler because there's nothing that handles, complicated data types.
I'm just trying to figure out if you even can make a group. I don't
No,
even,
I don't think you can.
I don't think that's
It's gonna
even
fail
code
scheduler.
that exists.
Yeah.
I
Because
don't-
there's no code to parse dictionaries and stuff like that.
This spec has been updated multiple times, so it seems like someone actually did look at it at one point. Is there no capability or options subgroup under there?
Well, the options is, the list of choices, right? I think.
For vendor, top level vendor reported extra specs, but for the standard capabilities, the options list what the possible values are.
You can see an options in that one and just set the default and description or something.
Oh, for the, what, the
For
set?
the QoS thing, for instance, the common capability
Oh.
that you were not reporting.
QoS just has description, title, and text.
I don't think the spec matches what we have. Because it's also showing that you would get a list of like true and false for some of these Boolean values, and that's not what you get. You get just type Boolean. I don't think this spec actually fits with what we have implemented.
Matt, in the developer impact part of the spec, it says what the dictionary structure needs to be that the driver reports back into capabilities.
Uh-huh.
Does the example in there actually match what you are doing?
Let me check that. Down in, you said developer impact?
Yeah. It says right there what the driver maintainers were supposed to have done.
Well, I haven't implemented get capabilities. Instead, I implemented the init one, the init vendor one.
Oh, huh.
The last person to touch this spec was Yvonne.
I looked at where is the capabilities?
What did they do? No, you're just the only one who might know
Oh, so it's
something.
in Cinder Volume Manager, but that means that it can't be overridden by the driver.
But it's going to call into your driver.
I thought the good capability was in the base class that then called the private get standard and get vendor.
So get capabilities, we'll call the driver init capabilities.
So maybe that is wrong, you can say get capabilities, it's supposed to say init capabilities.
And init capabilities, we'll call init vendor properties.
And that's where
So I think
Matt's
you-
making his changes.
Yes, I think he did implement it in the right place.
Yeah, because init capabilities has a lot of logic in there I don't want to be overridden.
Right.
It's just still very weird that the thing I need to be overriding is a quote unquote private method.
Yeah, I was staring at that too, but I was going to ignore that one for now.
I just think instead of saying there's nothing saying what this is supposed to do and this doesn't work and there's nothing there, we should actually try to do what we approved in the spec back in Liberty. And if there's a problem with that, then change it. But don't just throw it all away because no one wants to actually read through the spec and figure out what we said we would do.
Well, I don't think anybody said throw it all away. I mean, I wrote a spec that said tweak a few things in this and make it work right.
Anyone have the ability to get a hold of Mitsuyo?
Oh, Antonino.
Yeah.
So you're backing in pools.
We do have pools, but of colder types.
Okay, so now you do that between pools.
Well, that's abstracted in the kind of host layer. All
Because
this.
it looks like when somebody calls the CLI, you have to give it a fully qualified string, which is hostname and backend hash pool.
You don't have to give it a pool because in Cinder, pools basically for stuff like this are the same as hosts, and you can give it a host or a pool.
No, I meant you could have capabilities different inside.
Oh. Can you? Is that a thing that this supports? We can read it and find out, I guess.
Vendor X that I do at a point, you can have. I mean, that was how they constructed the storage service.
I mean, I don't see how in the init vendor properties method you could
Yeah.
report that. So I don't think you can do that in the current code because
So
it's a
gonna be
herd driver.
backend only.
I mean, that's what it is now, I think. Whether that's what we want, I'm not sure.
Well, pool level stuff is cool, I think, in terms of how things are meant to be consumed in terms. I mean, for instance, if you look at the NetApp backend, you can do thin provisioning on one pool and thin provisioning on another. On the same backend. Nope. Okay.
You missed what you said.
Oh, okay. No, I said you could have different capabilities based on the pools, right? For example, volume encryption. On the NetApp backend, you could encrypt one pool. I mean, encrypt the volumes that are coming into one pool, but actually have an unencrypted pool if you want.
Yes, exactly.
So in something like this, get capabilities. You only have the ability to report up the whole backend. You can't differentiate pools.
Well, you could potentially differentiate pools because, there is of course, you have to specify the host, the backend, the pool via that, and the pool is optional, you can just do host and backend. And then, I mean, if you really wanted, you could have a key for an extra spec key specifying a pool and say, like, these things are all dependent on the pool.
Yeah, so in that case, encryption is one for the whole backend, but then we should be reporting the same capabilities for each pool.
Right.
So the scheduler will know for each pool that they have.
No, I mean, this isn't scheduler dependent. This is to the administrator.
Well, it makes sense at least to me because each pool has the same available capabilities. Because this is not the settings of them, this is just what is available for you to set.
Well, my proposal was that it was going to include the settings.
Oh, it's
But
gonna
we haven't gotten back to that part of it yet.
Gotcha. I mean, that would be fine. I think that it would probably have to, I would think it would be a different call because there should be a difference between the capabilities supported and the current capabilities, or maybe have the current capabilities as one of the things reported in the same thing.
Well, that was my theory, was we would just add, it already has like name, type, and we could just add current, value or whatever.
But that would also be dependent on volume type, so you would have to specify the volume type.
I don't think that's true though, because why is it dependent on volume type?
Because the volume type is where you set the actual value.
What's the point here? Shouldn't the user receive exactly the same information that the scheduler has to take the decision? Because it's not that he needs. That's the use case, right? You want the user to be able to create the volume type with what the scheduler is to.
No, that's not it, because there are capabilities that you would set that don't affect scheduling, but could affect behavior in the driver for what it does on the back end.
It's called, is that what the scheduler knows about, and then also the vendor specific ones that get passed over the driver itself, so that it knows what.
Yeah, but if the driver has the capability, even though the scheduler not used, should be reported.
Well, you might mess up with those capability scheduler then, because then, I mean, technically you're reporting something which is a directive to your backend to go act and set something like QoS, but it's not a capability. The
Yeah, it's really a
capability is
separate-
QoS, true or false, if you ask me. But the directive is in that scope extra spec, saying this is the value I want you to set on the volume as the QoS.
Well,
So
one
that's
is
not a
a,
capability.
one is a high level concept and the other is the implementation. Well, so the high level concept is the back, like you support QoS, and then the implementation is, oh, you need, you know, read bandwidth max or write bandwidth max set to 1,000. Like that's the implementation detail.
Which is how the spec for the capabilities show it being reported.
And so scheduling should happen based on the high level concept and not on the implementation detail. At least that seems to be what was intended.
And the implementation detail is literally directions, toggles that you can actually go set whatever value to based on the. So I partially agree with you that there are two vehicles to go report capabilities, but it's a design.
So we make it so that and net vendor properties is just reporting the implementation details of what the backend, like what settings you can toggle on the backend. And then the actual, you have the standard ones, which are the higher level concepts. And so we put higher level concepts into the standard implementation details for backend into vendor properties. And then how are we different? And then the actual matching happens based off of what is reported in the get volume stats for the scheduler. So it's still telling you that like everything has this standard block. And the standard block contains all those high level concepts that you can actually do selection of a backend on.
Right.
And then an vendor properties contains whatever implementation details the vendor needs to match those backend specs, or sorry, those high level concepts. And then whatever the driver actually reports in the get volume stats is actually used by the scheduler combined with the standard capabilities to do scheduling.
Those schedule is what percent are reported in your driver.
Sorry, what was that?
So you said that in your driver you have your reporting is function of these values, and they need driver capabilities. And you're saying that those are the standard driver capabilities, right? And then you have one.
Right, and they should be,
instead.
yeah, they should be, the standard ones should be high level, nothing to do with the backend vendor. Like it is just, and in that case, it does make sense, true or false. You support QoS. And then the vendor properties are, how do you actually do this?
QoS is really not a good example.
Well,
We need
it's
to- we need to
vendor
fix it.
Provisioning, because
Yeah.
provisioning is the thing that the scheduler cares about. That is a tool that you, when you set the tool, schedule it, it's taking.
Well, any unscoped key, the scheduler will do that.
Yeah, but not a common one. Like,
I mean, that's the way that's the way it should work, at least. That
Well, what
seems
he's referring to is the whole thin, thick provisioning thing has a bunch of meaning in the schedule.
Well, yeah, but I feel like that's sort of special. And,
Yeah.
and maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe it should be just any unscoped key is a standard high-level capability versus a vendor implementation detail that the scheduler should have no opinion about whatsoever.
Sure, so you're saying you represent this list in two separate sections.
Yeah, well, it's already divided.
It's already divided into
Okay.
sections.
So,
The
so I'm
problem
just
is we,
reasoning about it. So you have the high-level stuff that you can talk about across all backends, and then you have the implementation detail stuff that is relevant only to this backend. And scheduler has an opinion about this one. Scheduler should never have an opinion about these. which from what I understand is the case, except for special ones like then provisioning of that additional semantic details in the scheduler. But really, I think that it should be simply a comparison between what is the driver reporting in terms of these high-level capabilities and what are available, like what are available toggles for high-level capabilities. Like you need these different high-level capabilities, and you can get away with not putting in the vendor stuff that's up to the admin for whatever backends they have.
So for the guest task, you suggest that the report will also then. High level without.
Well, so I'm thinking user cares about high-level stuff. Admin cares about implementation detail stuff.
I think this is also admin scope stuff.
They're all.
Oh, okay, maybe that's incorrect. Maybe it's just admin cares about each of these. It's just scheduler cares about high-level stuff. Doesn't, and no one but the admin cares about the low levels, implementation details. Maybe that's the better way of thinking.
But then how will you populate the default values, the description, the whatever?
Well, you still fill out.
You still fill this out.
Like the driver implementer is a separate entity. Driver implementer cares about all of these things. But we're just talking about from an operator perspective, the admin. The admin, or sorry, not the admin will care about both of these things. Sorry, but the scheduler only cares about the high level stuff.
Yeah, and that's true today. Right? The scheduler doesn't care about.
It is, but we have special things. Apparently, not all of these are treated the same.
That's true. I'm not sure how much it
I think
matters.
the
but it
confusion is this, after they added this new spec, but it's just not really implemented. I think it's supposed to be like this, those new property names, like thing provisioning QoS, probably is supposed to replace the old one, but then you have to go and change all the logic, right? So they renamed it.
The Cinder client call to see this doesn't even match what it says in the spec. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of details that are, out of sync there.
How do you do it today?
Get capability, right?
Oh, capability.
Yeah,
Okay, that's not get rules.
no.
No.
No,
Well,
so
that
you-
wasn't,
It has the
So-
ability to specify.
in my spec, I had suggested that we might want to add some of this to get rules, but that sounds like a much later concern than some of this other stuff for now.
So there's no capabilities, it just exists in the spec. And don't look at the spec.
No, it's called get capabilities.
Yeah, and it is a capability.
My point with the spec does not reflect what we actually have.
I do think that it should be Cinder capabilities list or something like that to match the other ones.
We'll get it right when we do openstack-cinder for you, maybe. So can we boil down, I mean, I like the general theory that you're going with here. Can we boil it down into something that's actually actionable after this, please? Because it sounds kind of like the right idea to me.
Well, I guess it also depends on, do we still want special behavior for some of these keys, or do we want them all high-level keys to be treated essentially the same, just based off of their type? Like,
So what is,
Booleans are treated on true or false basis, numerical values are treated in ranges or whatever.
I have no idea.
Because it was I didn't even realize that there was special behavior.
I don't know, what does special behavior mean?
Like some of these keys are treated differently than other keys,
Well,
and not
that-
just simply based off of the type of a key.
I mean, I think that's true. I don't know if it's true in a way that matters for this. I mean, the scheduler definitely looks at the thin and thick stuff and makes a bunch of different calculations and whatever. But that might not really matter for what we're doing.
And then there is the capability scheduler, which does all sorts of crazy extra spec ops with any unscoped extra spec.
Yes.
And that's just transparent as far as this thing is concerned.
And I suppose it's not that big of a deal if there's just one key that's treated special. And every other one is
one point.
Every other one's fine. It might just not be worth it to try to fix that one.
It's fine if we document it well.
Yeah, exactly.
So that Cinder future times doesn't have this discussion again.
Yeah,
Be visited by the three ghosts of Cinder.
What was that? of the specs and say driver maintainers would be to implement a method of calculate capabilities. But if we rely on driver maintenance to implement something, we're gonna get to a very,
If we rely on what?
on the driver maintenance
Oh.
to do anything, we're gonna get some.
Well, sure.
Drivers that will do the right thing and the others do not.
But that's gonna be the case that's gonna be the case for anything. If a driver maintainer is not correctly implementing their toggleable switches for a particular high level concept, that's on them.
Yeah, that's really not a
No, but-
concern for this, because
Yeah.
I mean, if people need it, they'll go
Yeah,
get the
they're-
driver.
like their customers will yell at them,
Yeah.
and they'll go and fix
Sure,
it.
but there's a user problem with Cinder here. If the driver maintainers go in and put code which exposes some wrong, a different schema or something, you can never build a UI or something out of this. So can we at least enforce the schema from the manager perspective? Init vendor capabilities fail hard because you're setting something which I don't understand.
Like, I mean, what's an example that you would fail on?
Like for instance, I saw a min value in maths driver. I want that back in the schema so that, you know, the UI building part of this is very easy. I know everything's gonna have a min value.
That sounds like a really good idea for the next phase of this.
Okay.
After
Yeah,
we
yeah.
figure out how to get
Well,
the pages
so
to
it's
work.
really all that this is doing is building a dictionary and it has a key minimum. And
Also,
so you can put logic into the volume point thing that just does a check and says, oh, is this below what the driver has documented as the minimum? If it does, it fails.
there's a special capability that the scheduler looks at called online extend support, which doesn't show up in any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, I see your name near it with a comment.
Git plain.
yeah.
Well, if he had a document that would have said add it somewhere, I'm sure it would have, you know.
Yeah, but something like that, I think with the standardized structure of the set property function, like that's something you could, like, provided that set property is enforcing the structure of the dictionary.
Yeah.
Like,
That solves the usability problem. Don't let it be loose because no one's ever built a thing on get pools. Trust me, I try to do this in Go for Cloud. And sometimes the data type is something different and then there is a list of things and all that stuff. Oh, thanks.
Matt, does your driver support any of those existing capabilities supported by scheduler, like scene provisioning, QoS, filter functions, goodness functions?
Yeah,
Do you
so,
support, which one do you support?
so if I go to here, I was just looking at that earlier. So I have quas support, compression ratio, filter function, goodness function. I think the only one that I don't have in here is thin provisioning, but I don't know that it's ever come up in a case. I was thinking about just throwing it in there. I don't actually know what Cinder's behavior is for that. I mean, the backend is automatically it's always thin provision.
Right.
Well, we have
Okay,
some,
so the support that you added for the compression is only handled, but there's no special handling in the.
No,
scheduler.
that's a
It's
cluster-wide setting and it's always on. Like you have to make a
Yeah.
really good argument to us for us to turn it on.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to see what's the gap between those new proposed properties and the ones that we supported early on. So like I was just trying to see if, let's say if you totally remove this, will you be able to see something's broken by testing your driver? Probably not, because it looks like your driver actually didn't really.
Well, so if
implement
you removed
this
Git,
otherwise.
if you removed Git capabilities, I would know almost immediately because my SE would be screaming.
yeah.
Right, but I mean,
It's
that's
there.
different, right? So you implement the new to get capability, but there are some, so just take a look at the QoS support, use that as an example, it's called QoS support, that's the old key. When
Yeah,
QoS
yeah.
support was added.
Oh,
right?
I
But
would,
the new one, they added, they call it QoS.
yeah,
That
so,
means
so
there's
if
no
all of that
handling in the
stuff,
scheduler.
if all of that stuff changed, I don't know that I would notice it, because
Because you're not really using a scheduler.
Well, so for the most part, yeah, all of
I-
my volume types are pinned to a backend, and they only use the DF keys. So,
On the thin provisioning thing, if you report thin provisioning,
Mhm.
you'll get different calculations for your free space and stuff.
oh, gotcha. Because I also have, I put the exact amounts in here because we do our own thin provisioning calculations.
Yeah, the way the over sub ratio works, I can't remember what it is, but it calculates something that's not what you would expect it to do.
Gotcha.
It's got
Because I
some
think that
But it
Are
does
built
look at
into
the driver will report. It does depend on driver reports. So
Right.
driver will report the capability. So driver will report how much capacity is still left. Right? It's just not, I mean, if driver does not report, then it's going to estimate.
I'm just telling him that if he turns it on, something will happen.
Yeah.
I don't think he knew
But
that.
he's not.
Like,
Yeah, at least so far, not having it has worked just fine for us.
yeah,
So,
because there's some weird kind of slop in the free space calculations with that stuff. It's inaccurate, but it's inaccurate like kind of in a good way. So it's kind of,
Well, it's inaccurate. I think it's, if your driver reports it, it should be accurate.
yeah.
But
So
there will be some gaps because there's the time that you report and the time, the provision already happened, and there's always
yeah,
there's always some window that it's not up to date. That could happen.
that is true.
Yes.
So can we boil down the theory going on here into something that we can write up into a spec?
okay.
Um,
So boil it down.
or just say it again and let Jay write it all down. What, I don't
Okay.
know. Whatever.
Well, I mean, what I'm thinking or envisioning here is high-level capabilities, implementation details, driver reporting, which is used for scheduling along with high-level capabilities, but not with implementation details.
So the driver reports only high level release.
Yes.
Will it come with the hand gestures as well?
Oh, of course, yes.
Are you Italian?
Yes. Okay, we have three things here, but I'm sort of Messiah. I really think it's just those 3 points: high-level capabilities, implementation details, and then driver reporting the high-level capabilities settings for its backend for scheduling purposes, but not implementation.
Which is the vendor properties.
Yeah, vendor
Those means something like POS.
Well, so the DF, like my DF colon stuff, that's my implementation details. My driver, my vendor prefix keys, which are the only things that I populate in the vendor properties.
Okay, so those are things that when you create a volume, you get some, for example, from those properties and then you set your
Yes. And so the admin would set those, and like, because we have quas enabled on this one, like we can have quas enabled for several different volume types, but the details of the implementation of quas are, oh, this one has this DF key set to 1,000, this one set to 500, this one set to 100.
Yeah, so you can schedule on, I need QoS,
Yes.
but then where it lands, it can then figure out like how to actually
Yeah, how to implement
set it. So, is Sean coming back?
I think he gave up and left.
Well, we need to figure out how to write this down so that he doesn't come back and say we're throwing out the whole spec and whatever, because that's what he was saying 20 minutes ago. So what do we need to write here to show that we actually are not just throwing out whatever we did before? Because apparently my spec was not convincing enough that I wasn't throwing it all away.
Well, I feel like this is a description of what already exists. All I'm doing
And
is
it-
just reframing.
And it mostly works if we fix some of the standard ones that shouldn't really be there.
And the thing is that no driver should have to implement standard capabilities. Like that, this is a high level concept for everybody.
Yeah.
All they have to do is report whether or not their backend supports that high level capability. And then whatever, and of course provide keys for how they do that. And that's implementation detail side. And so we expect them to have to deal with the implementation detail, but we've always had it. Because you can't just pass in quas equals true to any backend and have it work.
Can we just also fix that as a bug or something, saying we don't need this anymore? Cost support.
Well, no,
Well,
I think plus, well, so, do we have any backends that don't support class?
Yes, well, it depends on what you mean by QoS. This is the
Yeah.
whole problem.
Front end or back
So
end?
Ceph supports QoS wonderfully,
Yeah.
but it's front-end QoS,
Mhm.
which means it's managed differently in Cinder. And I think all of this is geared around back-end QoS.
I
So
don't
then
even
the-
know how much I understand the difference.
Well, the difference, oh, it's simple. So the
Oh.
difference is QoS and Ceph being front-end means that the QoS limits are imposed by QEMU on the attached side.
Oh, so it's by Nova.
It's not imposed by the Ceph layer itself. It's imposed by Nova.
Yeah.
The problem is all of this, I think, is all about back-end QoS.
Yes.
And then we end up with this distinction for admins about front-end versus back-end that I think is not actually supposed to be a distinction. And I
Well,
think this
because
is,
from the user perspective, there's no difference.
right.
So,
And that's the thing, is I don't think they're supposed to be treated separately, but this is kind of leaning that way.
yeah, so what that makes me think is that for something like front-end QoS where you have to tell Nova to do it, it should be the back end telling Nova to do it. And they should.
Well, it's
have-
not the back-end, it's the Cinder tells Nova to do it. Based on.
Well, but the
specs.
back end has to tell Cinder that Nova needs to do it.
Yeah, it doesn't do that. It's determined by the fact that you made a QoS spec that was, the type was front end.
Okay. I suppose that's weird.
Yeah, that was from so long ago that I don't even know I don't even know what else it would look like at this point. So.
I don't think that it's necessary to break it into two, because for Ceph, if you turn quas to true, it still just means it does nothing in that case, because it's handled from the Cinder side.
Right.
But every other backend that is expecting where QoS means backend QoS, they will provide you with the implementation detail keys.
Right.
And when you call get capabilities on it, those keys will be listed. We need like a flow chart.
I mean, it sounds like a vaguely reasonable picture to me.
I feel like this is something we all sort of understood. We just haven't
Well,
said explicitly.
yeah, but some of the code doesn't seem to understand it. That's the thing.
Please tell me we're good.
I mean, we're
So-
good. I don't know about anybody else, but
Can we have like in order to sort of kickstart this for maybe the next release, maybe we could have an option that is disableable that raises an exception if the driver does not implement inhibited properties.
That way you force them to.
Yeah, and of course you can disable it, like you say, override
Well,
this, but
and it's another one of those things that
So,
driver maintainers don't necessarily have to. I mean, we could read drivers and stick properties in there if we want to do that to help people.
Unless they're just sending an API call, the thing is exactly what maps into the backend.
Oh yeah, there are those drivers. I guess that's true.
let's start by implementing it for,
Yeah, that'll be cool to just add it, but then tell them in advance, it's not gonna be next release, but 2 releases from now.
yeah.
Right.
Let's,
like this is gonna raise an exception if you don't implement.
Yeah.
let's start by getting it implemented for the base drivers and those of you who are paying attention, and see how that goes before we start threatening people. Because I'm afraid we would make threats and then find out we know there are other things we don't know, and that would be bad.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure
Okay.
something will come up during the reference implementation.
So what's the next step on this whole thing?
Well, the next step was implementing it for the reference drivers. That was step 0.
Okay, I'm gonna ask this question.
It's not just driver changes though, that's the thing.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So I think we need to understand the spec from Liberty, update it where it's incorrect.
I think we need to understand it, but I assume it'll be a lot easier to just write a new spec that describes what's there and what we need. And
We can do it that way too.
I think don't throw away the old spec if you find where the old spec is missing something or we need to adapt it.
yeah,
Do you go back and update older specs?
I have tried to encourage that before, but it doesn't happen much. Because people read those to write documentation,
Yeah.
and they're always
That
wrong,
sucks.
and then it sucks for everyone.
There were some minor updates to this one.
That's actually something we can add to our release checklist, is after we implement new features,
I think
go make sure the spec actually,
I did put that on.
that might be in there already, yeah.
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do, I guess, is just move a bunch of specs that have not been implemented to and not implemented section. Call it out saying, don't write documentation, don't write tooling or whatever, expecting this to exist.
They weren't implemented, huh?
I don't think we have too many in
Did our,
Cinder that would be like that.
Yeah, that's true.
I think most of them in Cinder got implemented eventually,
Okay.
because there weren't too many people that were excited about writing specs that weren't also excited about finishing the thing.
Expected to.
I just like to dream about things.
I think we should go back and update that.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
could write a new spec that says here are the differences from
Yeah.
Liberty, but then it's still, someone's gonna end up on that Liberty spec. And
Yeah, we could at least put a big link at the top of it that says, go look
Yeah.
over here.
Yeah.
This spec.
Yeah, big red warning box at the top saying.
Yeah.
a bunch of-
And you have to use a clustered file system.
I'm gonna be brave and ask, what are we doing with the common capabilities again?
We're gonna delete at least some of them.
At least some of them.
Yeah,
And that's gonna be discussed on this.
well, at least compression. The other ones I'm not so sure, but
I think the ones that we are not really handling, right, the schedule is not handling, then it doesn't make sense to keep it there.
and it looks like we need to add one for online extend support,
Multi-attached to.
Might be interesting.
probably.
So just throwing out a crazy thought.
And then we have a bunch of the.
And the Git
group-related
capabilities,
too.
or sorry, the init vendor properties implementation stuff.
Hmm.
Would it be interesting to have a key, a mandatory key in each of the properties that says the top level thing that it's supporting? Or that it is implementing? So like say, this is how you, for instance,
Yeah.
compression's not a great one. Well, let's just say compression, for instance. Say we didn't remove the compression high level.
Right.
This is how you enable compression in the backend one, and for each of those properties, you have, top level, or whatever key we want to call it, equals compression.
So that sounds,
And maybe it could be an enum type or something.
so I mean, it's a good idea, but we don't need it if this tree thing actually works.
Hmm.
But I don't think the tree thing actually does work.
Okay.
So it sounds sensible because it's doing the same kind of thing. I
Yeah,
think.
it's essentially, if someone who isn't necessarily super familiar with the driver can go in, look at the Git capabilities and see, oh, if they want to implement compression, or they want to implement QoS, or they want to implement whatever, these are the keys that you can fiddle with to do so.
Hey, Matt, so in your driver, do you actually, when you see the, whatever is reported, and get capabilities, do you get both QoS_support and QoS?
Yeah, I get the standard ones when you run Git capabilities.
Uh-huh.
So they're listed there at the
That's what
bottom.
my driver's got to do.
Compression.
CQoS support as well.
Yeah, I see compression,
Because,
cost,
because,
replication,
yeah, because
enabled, and
the
provision.
QoS support is the one that,
Yeah.
that is typed in schedule, but the other one's not, right?
So when you run get capabilities, it's only these keys. So these are the non-vendor keys.
Right.
And if you use QoS right now, the water.
Yeah, but it's not, these things are not tied together. Like which is one of the issues that we have. It's like QoS support reported from the driver and is used by the scheduler, but QoS is then to get standard properties.
So when you hook that through, the other one doesn't show?
No. So the other stuff, and maybe that's also something.
Because your driver will be for both, so I was wondering how that will show.
Well, so maybe that should be, well, I
I
don't,
see
they,
your driver has the QoS
support, yeah. Well, but this isn't set from that. So this is set
I know
from,
this is not, I'm just asking that device code again to do this stuff, because those show, I'm wondering.
no, but it doesn't show. It's just this one. No, we're looking at get capabilities right here. So this is the function that I call.
Okay.
Yeah, sender get capabilities with
So
with
this
the
only
host.
shows
Yeah, it only shows my vendor keys, and then this is the stuff that was in the
okay, so it
standard.
doesn't show.
And that's something that should definitely be rectified.
This one definitely
What is
should- this
The
should
difference
fix
between
this.
QoS support and QoS.
Yeah, this.
I'm still fuzzy on that one. I'm gonna figure that one out later.
Okay,
Because-
I'm killing this discussion and moving on because,
We've pretty much got to where we wanted to be, I think.
okay, because it's been going for an hour and a half and half the room is tuned out.
Well, it's
and-
hard. I mean, it's been going for a couple of years technically, but
Yeah. Maybe this is why we never got it fixed before.
Yeah, so if you go over to
it's hard. We're not good at doing hard stuff.
That's what she
So this
said.
is an inventory property, which I implement with all of my DFs.
So, I would like to cover the other topics we have left and not hang over late. And nobody's paying attention to me.
So the standard capabilities should match
Capabilities to
what
be fixed.
drivers are required.
She hasn't cared about anything in a year and a half, and suddenly. Well, and this would be a prime case for one of those times where we actually do like a Zoom meeting to follow up and figure out what the heck to do. You think?
We should try to know, like, weekly or bi-weekly, updated on this to keep it going.
Exactly,
Okay.
but I don't know that anyone uses this at all.
Since people care, but we can't get it all figured out today. Shame. Stop.
We got a pretty good,
We gotta move on.
we got a pretty solid plan figured out.
Let's remove the code.
Question is whether we're gonna be able to read this later and reconstruct the same thing.
We're moving on. It's been an hour and a half. It's time to cover the other topics.
All Cinder features have to be designed in under an hour.
Yes. We will have follow-up meetings on this. Let's move on. I'm being leaderly. Don't laugh at me. Sean, yes, do a major release. Done.
Not done.
I put a link in there to the set of patches that I have so far. Everything is dependent off of that base one that adds the release note that I've workflowed -1 to block.
Except I think mine fell out of there, actually.
Okay. But I think we want, since these changes require a major version bump, I wanted to have that control key of making sure everything that we want that requires a major version bump is ready to go before we actually merge it all.
Okay, that makes
So we don't
sense.
have to come up with another major version the next release. So you can see under there the ones that I've done so far. If there's any other backwards incompatible changes that folks are aware of that we would like to get into this intercon, we should get those proposed and include that in that group.
So we need to make the shell point to something newer than 3.0. That's my big incompatible major version thing we should get in here, I think.
That was one of the big things when we debated microversions is we didn't want to have it go.
Yeah, we did it wrong. We actually should have defaulted to 3.latest instead of what we did, because what we
said we
did,
absolutely didn't want to do that.
some people said that. I said it
The
sucks.
majority said that.
Well,
and-
I think the majority was wrong, but regardless of that discussion, now that we're doing a major version bump, we can break compatibility for stuff like that because it's a major update,
I still agree with the reasoning for not doing it,
which is what?
that we don't want them to suddenly get new behavior without specifying that they want that new behavior.
So we are going to support 3.0 forever.
Yeah.
Because we just said the other day that we're not doing that. There's a whole
Where
discussion.
did we say that?
Okay, what discussion was it the other day that we were talking about microversions and we were discussing whether we have to maintain 3.0 forever? Do you remember this, Jay? I'm pretty sure you were there.
Well, we do, because microversions are built up, and we can't get rid of it.
I think we can get rid of it. That's,
But then if they specify the lower microversion, then we still need to support that whole base functionality.
I don't think I was in that discussion.
you say
We
you-
talked about backporting fixes, but
So when you say you're getting rid of 3.0, you mean like
Let's
starting
back
at
up.
346 or
let's
something?
back up from that part because that's not relevant to this directly. What I'm saying is when you go run Cinder do something, you should run something from the last few years instead of 3.0 when you're calling the shell out of the box.
I personally agree,
It's got those
but
functions that can do the negotiation to figure out what's the highest.
The shell
available.
doesn't do anything like that.
Right, but so that's, I guess that's the question is, do we want the, we could have the behavior where it does the negotiation and then, I mean, right, there's code there that'll check to see what
hold
the
on.
highest microversion supported by the server is and the highest microversion supported by the client is. And then we could do that. But, right, and then you could ask for something less. So you would know that you're not gonna get anything broken. You don't know for sure what you're gonna get,
You
but it's gonna
would
be
not
that,
know you're not gonna get anything broken.
because you'll get what the response you're gonna get back is something that both the client and the server are supporting.
Yes, but
Now, as far as like, yeah, what you're expecting.
Also,
like,
didn't we just backport patches to stable client that changed the microversion people get?
we changed
No,
the
it
top,
changes
the
the-
possible
And
microversion
if
they
you were a
use.
Cinder client library user that calls the method that says pick the newest one, then it changed.
yeah, and we said that's fine. The shell, though, we don't want unexpected behavior because the scenario is I've got a newer client than my current cloud
Bless you.
has. I'm doing stuff, I've scripted stuff, it works the way I need. Suddenly, without me knowing, my cloud provider upgrades their Cinder service to something that has a much higher microversion. And my client is capable to that, but I have been going against this lower version for
I think it's unexpected behavior to install OpenStack train and run against everything that was written in 2014.
So you would
And I think
rather
that
have
user
behavior
experience
change-
sucks.
You would rather have behavior change unexpectedly for people.
If you have a major version, yes, that's the one time that you can do that and then get away with it.
No. There's that change, but then there's also the change of the scenario that I talked about where my cloud provider upgrades over the weekend. I didn't know about it. I run the command that I always run and suddenly something different.
I mean, if
happens.
your cloud provider upgrades your software, anything could happen. I don't understand the scenario.
So we should just not give them any protection.
What are you protecting against?
With the way we do things now, my cloud provider upgrades the Cinder service. I am guaranteed to still get the same behavior that I've come to expect.
Yeah. Right, but I'm not talking about the cloud provider upgrading the service. We're talking about upgrading the client.
I know, and the way you're saying to upgrade the client is what is going to cause problems when my cloud provider does that. Because suddenly the client that I'm using, that was newer than my provider's Cinder version, was giving me the behavior that I expected, and now it's not. So it's not an issue of upgrading the Cinder client, it's an issue of changing the behavior of the Cinder client, and then down the road, the Cinder service that I'm talking to is upgraded and changes what happens.
Okay, I think it's fine. That's my stance on this scenario.
No, I mean.
You can laugh at it, but I'm telling you, I think it's fine.
But don't you guys?
I
have the
also
version-
don't understand this issue because if you don't want to change any behavior, you can hardcode migration users. We are
Right.
local.
So we're trying to protect,
Whatever.
we're trying to protect
Parameter.
people who had a bunch of compatibility stuff that they got on a real specific version of everything. And they did it by scripting shell commands and not by using the Cinder client library. I'm not sure that that's a hugely interesting category of people that have done that. We have talked
There's far
about-
more people that are calling the Cinder command line in Bash script than are writing Python code to use it as a library.
Well, I have said for years that they probably shouldn't be doing that. I don't know how many people do that, but
Isn't the client upgrade still under the user control? And we can.
Yeah.
We can tell them that we are bumping up the microwaves.
Yes, like I said, it's not the issue of upgrading the client. It's fine, I've upgraded my client. And my interaction with my cloud is consistent until all of a sudden, unknown to me, my provider upgrades the Cinder service.
Yeah.
And now it's different, and I don't know
It
why.
won't be though, because it won't be though. I'm looking at the patch that you guys are discussing, so that you guys are bumping it up.
I'm not 100% sure that that patch is even right
Oh.
because I wanted to talk about this before
Yeah.
we went and coded this
So,
stupid thing.
I think that this is compatible with the way Manila and Ironic are doing it, and I was surprised that Cinder is keeping it at 3.0. That's why I'm asking.
So you do pick up whatever the latest thing is. that-
Yeah, so from time to time, when we release the client, we are bumping up the version to the last micro version. We don't use the latest, the keyword latest. We just said, for this release, when we release the Python Manila client, the version has been upgraded from 2.42 to 2.49.
So
That's the API
I
mode.
went conservative and picked for train that we would at least start at Queens
Okay.
to have a window of,
So there is this version negotiation that protects from, if at all the client has been upgraded to a version that is higher than that of the server.
It's
it will
not
be-
about the client being up.
Yes, so or if the server is at a higher level than the client,
Yeah.
then things are gonna work very consistently.
Other server is at a lower level than the client.
Yeah.
So that negotiation always gets you down to this version.
Yep.
And then they upgrade the server.
What's
And
the,
then
what's the
suddenly,
negotiation that happens in that case?
Highest
goes-
Cinder version available and highest Cinder client version available.
How have you negotiated that?
The server wins, because obviously the other stuff the
No, we
client
won't go
can.
higher than what the client
Yeah, the
knows
client-
about.
But you've
Right,
already,
well,
you've had to
right.
manually, you've had to manually already pick a version in that situation.
It negotiated, this is the highest version that the servers knows about, this is the highest version that the client knows about. Okay, we're gonna do this lowest common.
I don't think that
Denominator.
happens in the
highest
shell.
common-
I don't think that happens in the shell client.
No, because we prevented that from happening, because we didn't want to screw people over.
Oh, so that's different from the way the other clients are implemented.
Oh, so we're inconsistent with the other clients?
Because there was this version negotiation discussion we had in the API 6 that percolated into the other clients.
Okay.
Was there something you wanted to pick on?
Oh, yes. So I understand your issue, but that's why in my scripts, shell scripts, I use microversion, which I want to use. But not,
And that's what we expected the behavior to be.
yes, but I'm recording microversion.
Anybody that we break, they can go set the version.
The same
That's fine.
behavior every time.
Yeah.
But if we stick with 2.0 by default every time, it means we will stick with API v2 forever.
Yeah, that's what it means.
The
The-
3.0, 3
Oh,
It's too
Right.
low.
it's the same.
You install Cinder out of the
3.0
box and you
migration.
get what we had in V2, basically, is what you
Yes.
get.
And the expectation at the time was that they would set OS volume API version environment variable in their OpenRC to, if they had a higher version that they wanted to make sure it was always.
That's what, some people thought was a good idea. I even said back when we did that was not a good idea. And
So,
you know,
all right, so we could, since it's a major API version change, we could do the behavior that the other clients are doing, so that by default, you're always going to get the highest that both the client and the server support. And document clearly that if you want consistency across all the clouds you use, then it's up to you to query them to find out what the highest one they support is, and then use that in your. Or you
if
could,
they're doing advanced enough stuff that minor API changes break them, then they needed to read the documentation.
I'm the minority here, but
No, you're not. I'm actually concerned about the consistency between these clients. And I'm like, I use multiple services, and I'm now going to see a different behavior in Cinder versus the other services that I'm seeing.
no, in the other services you're using, you're going to see different behavior in each cloud you use.
No, that's true, but when that version negotiation
that's the
happened.
other thing, yeah.
So
Well, that's-
there is
that's-
one more
so it's-
expectation
it
from
depends on
users.
what
Some,
Right, you want.
Seeing different
Well,
behaviors in
but
different
user
clouds was the whole
software-
So
design.
you can make sure it's the same in every one.
expect
Set the environment
that
variable for
they will
the
have new feature by default, but we still the client they want.
Yeah. But at the same time.
Yeah,
you
and
would use,
that's always seemed really weird to
any of the
me.
newer
It is weird because we
If-
should have
if my RC
defaulted to
file
3
goes with my
latest
command line that says,
and made it opt-in for
That's
all
what
the
this
stuff.
microversion stuff.
We were doing so well this PTG.
Okay. Change it.
What are you doing with the OpenStack client? How you work? Because there you've got to be consistent. right?
Nobody knows.
They enforce the consistency
Yes.
because they just use us as a library.
Well, they don't even have Cinder microversions yet, I don't
They
think.
do.
What's it? It's
They do.
3 dot something, right?
Yeah.
3.0.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
If you try setting the OS one.
I don't think it works.
It immediately comes back and says, we only support 1, 2, and 3.
3 is the maximum, 3.0.
Okay.
Okay.
That's what it tells
And
me.
then they have code in there for microversions.
Yeah.
But not in the, not the OpenStack volume command. Other,
I tried it the other day and it reports you can pick 1, 2, or 3. That's all it says.
in fact, in triple O, we tried adding microversions to the OS volume API. And it was much harder.
I love dumpster
So you can tell we all
fires.
know what's going on with OpenStack client.
Yeah, support for it, you want to be able to,
None of us maintain it.
map it. Which is actually a really nice session.
So I think, maybe I should just shut up.
No.
I think it depends on what our user model is, right? So if you expect somebody has a favorite cloud and they're going to use it, then it makes sense to have this. You should use the client should give the response that's the highest microversion it can, that the server also handles. But if you think the behavior is that somebody's always going to be doing multiple clouds, then that's not good behavior. But if you think somebody's going to do multiple clouds, is going to know what they're doing, then you could have behavior that changes.
Someone who's doing multiple clouds should not be coding against the shell client.
The shell was never meant for a stable API. That's what it's for. It's why we have a Python library.
Exactly, and where you can control what the macroversion you're always going to get, and you're never going to change because we're going to guarantee backwards compatibility at that version.
Right, so
The shell should just be left alone for the project to evolve as the project evolves, because otherwise you're always going to get stuck at 3.0 and you're not going to get, or you have to do something else to get the new.
right, but even as like a user who's just doing stuff, like, do you expect to see different responses?
So
It's
we had
really,
people
it's really
argue
minor
for
stuff
this.
normally.
Yeah,
It's hard to provide a shell backwards compatibility sort of thing, because
that's what the microversions are trying to do, because they're hiding different columns and different responses and things like that.
because
I guess I just don't know.
the shell is formatting tables and stuff like that. You don't really want to mess
Since
with
it doesn't have JSON anyway. No one's parsing that.
Well, if you do the OpenStack client, you can get it.
You say that.
It's too small to parse.
Where the microversions aren't working anyway. So, all right, should we just take a vote? Just change it? Is Sean the only person in the room that thinks we shouldn't change the functionality?
So there's a couple of options. We can't just do
What?
a yes, no vote. There's still at least two options here.
Fuck.
Or we could pick one and do this again next time, whatever. But
Okay, what are the options?
So the two clear options, the two options we have so far are we pick a version that we think is conservative enough to not freak everybody out or whatever, which is, I picked one from Queens, which I don't remember what it was. The other option is we do what a lot of people would like to do and just move the shell to just use 3.latest instead of a version by default and make everybody opt in to an old one.
Yeah, don't use latest. That's all.
Well, conceptually, I don't.
Yeah, so it's some version that you control, but not latest. That is
What do you
where the
mean?
phrase goes.
Okay, so what are other clients doing? Are they setting some trusted version or are they going with the
Well,
latest
he's saying
available?
they're doing a negotiation between the client and the server.
Yeah, so
Okay.
if you use the latest pip install Python vanilla client, you're gonna get something that starts with version 2.49. And I'm running it against a Queen's vanilla. It just downgraded to 2.40.
Okay,
So if we were going to do that, then what we need to do is pick a default version of whatever. But then we also need to add this negotiation to it so that it can downgrade and still run instead of just fail on other.
I think our default is whatever the highest possible is,
Yes.
and we downgrade to whatever the server can do.
It's usually also.
Right, but we don't have somebody had to go code the downgrade thing. My patch was just like, change this version number.
Right.
So that's great. I mean, it sounds awesome.
There's examples of auto negotiation code out there already.
No, I totally think it's a
We
great
have-
idea. I'm just saying that it's more than the one line code change, but that's fine.
Right.
I just want to make sure we don't want to go ship this before somebody writes it.
No, yeah, that's fine. Because if we're gonna do a major release, let's do it right.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay.
And then I guess as a side note, it'd be great if somebody would go figure out what's up with OpenStack client and microversions. Oh, right. Sorry.
Mm. Ta-da. Ta-da. I'm calling it ta-da.
Oh, arithmetic action item there. Got a what? Action item on the Etherpad.
Jeez, what's that?
That was good.
To make sure that you don't release until
Oh,
we've got everything merged.
Yeah, I'm just looking at mine.
Do we also need to,
No more questions.
okay.
No. What?
Are we going to try to batch up all of the incompatible major changes and then merge them all at the same time?
Yeah,
I think we kind of have to do that.
that's the whole,
They're all based on that.
Oh, yeah,
release note that's got a workflow minus one so that we make sure everything is ready before we.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Yep.
good.
so it'll be one big release. Are you going to be contentious?
Yeah, gonna be,
Is it going to be easy? Because I don't think my brain can take.
I have a hard time
Yeah, it's a
predicting
small-
someone arguing against this one. Seems
Okay.
weird.
Well, the OpenStack client volume receives a contribution from people outside Cinder team.
Yep.
And that's great.
Okay.
But the problem is that these contributions are being approved for people outside the Cinder core.
Yep.
So we don't have really control over what's going on in the OpenStack client. Well, and a possible solution is to add the current Cinder link as a plugin for the OpenStack client. I don't know if Alan wants to add something.
Some other clients do this already.
Oh,
Yeah.
So
wait.
did you say?
Is there-
Yeah, I'm there with you, buddy.
As I remember, I raised this question a few years ago, and at that time, OpenStack client core team, or maybe it was TC, honestly, I don't remember. They strongly required to have seen the keystone glance now when you turn in the code of OpenStack client. They did not agree to have Cinder as a required plugin. I don't remember why, but I'm all in to make Cinder as a required plugin for OpenStack client. It will be easier both for us and for OpenStack client users.
So what do we do with all the commands that are already there?
Oh, we can. So I remember how Ionic team did. They just moved everything to Python Ionic client and as OpenStack client plugin.
Yeah, but
So
we don't want to do that, I don't think.
Huh?
I don't think we want to do that, though.
So are we saying
we
Cinder
don't-
client would go away? It would, well, our Python Cinder client would go away.
No.
The CLI would go
Yes.
away, but
It doesn't have to.
Yes, we can just duplicate it and not support. But we can have the code in the same repository for both for Cinder client CLI and for OpenStack client CLI.
so we would go away from this dual maintenance thing we have right now where we've got Cinder client and then hoping stuff migrates to OpenStack client.
I have a way to simplify this for you in terms of how this is implemented. I mean, these are all just entry points. Currently, OSC exposes them. If you take them from tree and put it in the Cinder client as a plugin, and you start exposing them, people would just install the OpenStack client, and the Cinder client will also be installed. And this just magically appears for the users. Nothing just changes. Nothing changes.
Yeah, basically, so set aside the issue of the syntax incompatibility issues, you know, OpenStack one create and Cinder create. But basically, make a plugin, OpenStack volume essentially becomes an alias for Cinder.
Will they let us change the syntax of everything? Because I would really like
We're
to,
gonna address that, I don't think they're going to let us get away with it.
because ours is better than theirs. and I want to keep it.
Yeah, I hate some of the decisions they made.
The
Yeah,
syntax that is currently hard-coded in their client
yeah, it's tricky.
and add all the capabilities in our client. Any change to remake to our client is a free upgrade to the OpenStack client.
So would we end up mapping their existing commands into our code to run them?
We will need some kind of compatibility.
Because you would also have to transform the data into something they can display.
You're going to start using these utilities that do YAML, whatever, and all the common capabilities that are there in the OpenStack lib. You'll get them for free, but that will change the way Cinder commands are currently working.
So- It's really two different conversations could be here. One about how OpenStack client and Cinder client handle naming conventions, required arguments, and so on. And the second, I think the more important topic on this, it's who will own the code.
I think we own it. That's the
That's
plan, right?
In this plan, we need to create OpenStack you need to remove Cinder related code from OpenStack client and move everything as plugin for
Yeah, which is
into
really
our
simple.
repository.
And that gives you.
Not OpenStack SDK to whoever wrote that.
Yeah, what does that mean?
That's not what we're gonna do, I don't think.
Well, that's where everything is going, so.
Yeah, but
changing this, we're gonna be changing.
Having
also.
clients depend on OpenStack SDK is just wrong, I think. We had this whole debate actually 6 months ago for, I can't remember why. There was some reason.
As I remember, not all clients, but somebody proposed to move OpenStack client to use OpenStack SDK.
Oh, it was the cursive thing.
I think it was Monty.
Nova is actually talking about getting rid of all of their Python client dependencies and just use OpenStack SDK so to communicate with Cinder and clients.
I don't see how that's, we can just have that discussion later. I don't see how that's possibly a good idea, but I don't think it matters for right now.
Yeah, you don't have to do the OpenStack SDK thing to do the OpenStack client thing. And that's what people try to differentiate on the goal, but that is no longer happening for trade, so we can breathe.
Yeah, our approach is to sort of fight one battle at a time, as it were. Go on and fight or consider, however we look at it, but go on.
Get OpenStack client.
Fill the gap, which in our case is 100% with respect to the OpenStack client. It does mean we pay, but maintain control of, still keep a vanilla client. Do the plugin thing, so we can run vanilla standalone client if we want to. The price we pay there is we give up our existing idioms and conform, just like you said, the part after the illness between vanilla and OpenStack share will need to conform to some.
You don't have the
syntax
to worry about.
No, we have an existing vanilla client, where we may not be able to keep exactly the same idioms going forward. Why? Because they're going to expect some conformance across the board with the rest of OpenStack.
Do they document what any of those might be?
Pardon?
By idioms, do you mean the subcommands or the behavior of the?
Yeah, the subcommands, right? I mean, may not be exactly what we have today.
Is there some set of guidelines around what we would be looking at?
Yeah, there's best practices about how to write a command in OpenStack client.
My concern is that I
And
think
in our,
the way they've
discussion,
done
we thought, well, that's work, as long as we can maintain our own client and maintain control of it, we don't mind kind of saying, okay, we'll speak with
When you say
a
OpenStack
Midwestern accent instead of a North Carolina accent or whatever. I mean, I'm just kind of joking.
Yeah.
As long as we preserve the semantics, some superficial syntax changes for the good of the community, fine, we can do that. As long as we maintain control of the client, actually the content of the client, the semantics of the client.
The biggest problem with the concern about adopting the OpenStack client semantics is they didn't even get volume create right. It is currently implemented in a way that requires you to give every volume a name, which is ridiculous and not how Cinder works. So the idea that we can happily accept OpenStack client semantics, I find
So
pretty.
can we get that fixed as part of, part of a compromise? I mean, if
Oh, I don't-
there are things that are broken.
I don't know.
There's no reason to do them.
I don't know who's even on the other side that we should be talking to about fixing it. So
I didn't find much joy when I tried some new patches.
yeah.
There aren't many people, so if there's someone we want to talk to, Dean Schroyer is still probably the best one.
So every time when we're speaking about let's implement OpenStack client plugin or let's execute OpenStack client from Cinder team, we are starting to argue about the syntax, required arguments, semantics, and
For
for
us,
us
that will be the problem.
changes.
It's a big deal for shell clients. I mean,
But that can
Honestly,
be a
it's not
problem.
a real big deal at the moment. So we've got
I think it's a big deal that OpenStack client didn't get like the #1 Cinder
Right.
operation done correctly.
But now, if that's your plugin.
But we can-
interpreting, can't you just fix OpenStack?
Yeah, if it's using our
Maybe.
plugin, then we avoid that in the
Well,
future.
Right, you own, if it's done with the plugin model as opposed to hard coded into their thing, it seems to me you could just fix that.
So,
Good
Yeah,
point.
maybe.
so I am supportive of going down this route. I think we've been, avoiding OpenStack client for too long. We have issues with how it works, and it's because we weren't involved with it. If doing a plugin to it can help resolve that, I would like to do that, but I think we need to understand how much we have to change our current, is it literally Cinder becomes OpenStack volume and commands? If so, great, let's do it. If it turns into this disgusting mess of munging what they currently have with what we want and what have you, then we have a problem.
But, and then on the review issue, once it's a plugin, right, you can change the plugin without requiring a review. Right.
Yeah.
Well, unless there's some kind of
It
service
comes
test that
from
we're using.
From the client itself.
It should not be a CLI.
Well, there were some functional ones at one point.
Inside the OpenStack line.
So can we state that we will, can we state that for the foreseeable future, we're gonna also keep the Cinder shell as something that we work on and ship?
Yes, why not?
Because I think
I
we
mean-
really should do that.
Yeah, can we, so does forward motion on the Cinder client shell have to stop to make things a plugin to OpenStack client?
I don't see any.
Is it,
reason-
is it dual maintenance or is it using the same code path? Okay,
Probably is not, because currently the Cinder shell is one big shell that's there. The OpenStack client shells are going to be implemented as shells. Each commandlet has its own shell. This thing that, and the reason is because you have different kinds of commands that can be different kinds of arguments for these commands. It enforces a whole another coding style, which is nice because everything will be beautiful after that. But for the fact that the current shell will not directly correspond to that. So what we are trying to do, for one, is to just call out a deprecation notice that, yes, Manola's current shell is going to stop working like it is. And we are refactoring this to support both the Manola shell and the OpenStack share shell to behave exactly the same. All you have to do is, just say Manola create, and then that's the same thing as OpenStack share create, except the code is completely different from what it is right now. I can show you an example.
Okay.
I started working on the business side.
In order to achieve that goal, supporting both,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to refactor.
Our existing client.
Under the hood.
Yes, under the hood without the users knowing, but telling the users that your command experience is going to change because we now are supporting this fancy way of doing things to be consistent with.
How will the experience change?
Because, so every command, for instance, a list. So there's a list formatter that's there. It adds a bunch of options, and these options themselves come with their own characteristics. For example, let's say there's a sort that's there only for list commands and not for create commands. So there are these helpers that are there in the OpenStack line to provide consistency between all of the list commands. So that's for the better.
Okay.
So right now, we don't have all of that. Our command, our shell, which we derived from Cinder shell, is one big flat shell implementation that just says art parse this, art parse this, art parse this, and just dumps all the commands into that one big art parse shell. So these are all implemented as separate shells, and you can evolve it individually after that. So there'll be a volume backup shell just to do backup commands and stuff. Which is why I think it's a cool project for an intern.
And if only it doesn't take 3 or 4 seconds just to execute any OpenStack.
So that's actually one of my big concerns about why we need to keep the Cinder one around.
Yeah. So think of this.
If you can,
well, so Sean was worried about people who are automating off of the Cinder client. I'm surprised he's quiet now. If we're going to OpenStack client,
So think of it in a world where there's no OpenStack and just Cinder standalone. You'll just be installing the Cinder client.
Right.
And nobody will use OpenStack volume to create your, to interact with the Cinder client.
Okay, so there will, but wait, I thought you were just saying you wouldn't still have a,
If you wanted to use it with
CLI.
OpenStack, you would be installing the OpenStack client
yeah,
as well as the Cinder client.
Yeah.
But the Cinder client is by doing some plumbing with Stevedore extensions,
okay,
connecting to OpenStack client.
okay.
So we'll still have Cinder
Yeah.
client as a
Yes.
CLI. We just will be refactoring a bunch of stuff under the hood,
Okay,
some code, but the experience of it will still be there and be about the same.
That's right. So if you want to do standalone, nobody is forcing you to install the other clients that are part of OpenStack.
Yeah, which pulls in 48 Python dependencies.
Exactly, and OpenStack just 48, like forever to render.
Right.
But just to
I feel like
be
that's no problem.
successful, we have to reach out to the OpenStack team. Probably.
Yeah, do we have some idea of like, are they gonna welcome us doing this? Like, we have no idea what's going on over there.
I don't know if you saw that, there's a whole proposal for a cycle rule to get everyone moved over to the OpenStack client. Doing the plugin was one of the possible approaches.
That's good.
And I think on that thread, Dean said, I'm open to the idea of pushing these out into the plugins.
Yeah.
Because that will just help the project just become a library.
Yeah, but I think they did also say they wanted at least some oversight of making sure that the commands were consistent. Yeah.
You gotta add some course.
Isn't OpenStack client still using the V2 API?
It can use V3, but it can only use V3.0.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, that was something we noted in the other one, that obviously that will have to get fixed as part of this.
So the to-dos I put out there, you to reach out to Dean and see if he's supportive. And then investigate our questions and concerns and come back and let us know what you find out. Does that sound like a reasonable path forward?
And wait, I have a question there.
I don't know if
Now
you
that
guys
you're
can-
considering doing a major version upgrade.
What?
Now that you're considering doing a major version upgrade because you merged another bunch of things, I was looking at the patch from Sean. So this will also be a major version
Yeah,
upgrade.
this is gonna be the next one, I think.
It's the next way.
Yeah.
I mean, unless y'all are gonna write this like really fast.
I like this idea of just do a major version upgrade. So
Are
we
you-
don't have to do a deprecation.
Alan, are you okay with the to-dos? Okay. All right, so I think we've wrapped up that discussion. Good. Hopefully a short discussion. Does anybody have interest in me continuing to work on moving us to storyboard?
Wasn't there, so I really don't want to move to storyboard, but wasn't there some whole thing about Launchpad was gonna like shut down or something?
Nope.
No? I thought-
They were threatening us with a number thing
Oh,
that might make it harder to move.
I don't know what that means, but sounds good enough for me.
They wanted us to move before 2 million so that Launchpad bugs, so that there would be some matchup in the numbers in storyboard or whatever. So if nobody cares, then I'm not gonna continue to push this, because every time I bring it up, I get, yeah, we don't want to do that yet.
I am okay with storyboard.
We'll do it eventually.
Would you like to
sure,
move
but
us?
When storyboard is obviously ready for us to move to it, we can move to it.
Are you planning to do it this release, Tom, or are you still delaying?
We can do it right now.
Yeah, they were going, what?
Attachment.
We got a great, new QE who's triaging all our bugs upstream and stuff now. And, he was saying, should we go to storyboard, should we use Launchpad or whatever? I said, look, I want you to do what you're comfortable with right now. I want to take advantage of just moving ahead with that. And he was looking at both of them, and he said, I see what you're doing with Launchpad right now. I'd rather continue with that right now than Highly or something new. That was kind of one dynamic. The other was, I was kind of charmed by being able to do Kanban like board reports and so on. I still think that's attractive and so on. But I'm also quite concerned about the amount, I'm becoming increasingly concerned about the resources available to storyboard.
Yep,
And
exactly.
Manila's a relatively minor project. You know, in the scheme of things. So my position is really kind of look at right on board when Neutron and Nova and Cinder and people are going to storyboard, we will do the right thing and you move with the rest of the community. But I kind of think we're exposed out there as a smaller project going out there and just being an experiment if we lead on this. So that's a quick, not that quick, but that's a perspective on this.
You know, and
When Glance does it too, you know, when all of us are over there, when it's a non-standard, you know, I think it works fine for release or whatever. It's a different kind of thing. We're a classic. You know, the kind of bugs we have and the issues we work on are, you know, just like what Nova works on at a smaller scale. So.
Okay.
And we asked those questions about what's stopping us, including, let's say, attachment support to deal with security patches, log files, etc. They told us
Yeah.
space.openstack.org.
That was a bit of a frustrating story because the answer came back, well, we set it up, we've got everything we can, but there aren't resources for it.
Yeah.
So that kind of led me to the second thing. I don't blame you if there aren't resources for it. You've made the hooks and everything, but that doesn't mean the tool's ready for us either.
Yep.
So I talked with Kendall about attachments for storyboard, and she said that almost everything are ready for this.
Do they have storage behind it?
Yes, as I know, they're just waiting for few features to OpenStack SDK, and she really hope to get this working this cycle.
No. And they don't have security bug support yet, do they? They're working on
Not
it.
in a way not in a way that's actually safe to report security bugs with.
Okay.
What do you mean?
So the problem with reporting security bugs, last time I looked at it, is that you have to go mark it as private, and then you have to send it to like Jay Bryant or something.
Oh, you can't subscribe a group.
No, well, they were,
It's on the reporter side. There's nothing that makes it go
directly
to the right place.
To get assigned to a.
So you have,
does this with security groups.
so you have to mark it as private, and then you have to write who you want it to be assigned to.
Okay.
And if you look at it carefully, you'll notice that when you're trying to write, like, send the security bug to Jay Bryant, the field just searches on names, and it doesn't even show like the email address. So right now, like anybody could literally go on there and register an account as Jay Bryant and then end up catching our security bugs because people entering them can't even tell who to send them to. It's a bad design.
okay.
Can we just have some list of features we required and wait until storyboard?
That one's been on the list for a while.
Yeah, it's been on there for a while.
Like since this started.
So, and who is it that, you went to the pain points? No, that was Walt that went to the pain points discussion. And it didn't sound like they'd made a lot of progress. So I have a straw man design out there in an Etherpad. I've had it approved by Kendall. So they can't say that we haven't done anything to prepare, but if Nova, Neutron, Manila are not going right now, then we've got plenty of other issues to work on, is my feeling. So, and let's see where the security thing goes.
I mean, I think it's fundamentally a resource issue, not, you know, the people working on it, doing that work and so on. It's just-
And it works perfectly for those teams that are using it. Great. I mean, that's good.
Yeah.
I put this other one in there, mostly joking, but there has been a little discussion that this is a self-hosted project that is open source completely and has been advancing a lot. So there's some discussion happening that bug reporting and tracking is not a core capability or mission of this community, so why are we trying to make storyboard happen? So if people are interested in this other thing, then maybe there's like a grassroots maybe rather just.
Right, I think people, you know, envision it to be something like Zoom, you know, I mean, you know, that doesn't.
Well, I guess the theory was I guess the theory was that it was going to be a core competency of like the infra open dev guys, right? But I mean, not us, but
Yeah, and if the resources were there and the enthusiasm, then they should aim for an open stack in that case. You know, it's not, you know, like you say, it's not aligned with OpenStack, it's open source plug-in storage, not all of those. It's great.
We're over, but should we try to finish the?
Yep. So I'm leaving it that we're not going to get on that train.
You were waiting.
We'll work on that in the future. All right. I'm sure this one will be perfectly easy.
But it's more of a question of, do we want to have an ongoing job that we know can fail every time? Or wait for the job, the issue to get fixed and then enable one job?
I mean, it only really makes sense to merge it if we think somebody's going to go fix it soon.
Well, it better, because otherwise we should mark the driver as unsupported and get it out of there.
Is it a driver related thing?
There's some question of whether it's an issue in task flow or
The
way that this driver is using task flow.
The last analysis I heard, I think the theory was that it was actually a task flow problem, but I haven't looked into it.
Ben looked a little bit and said he thought it was actually the way Cinder was using it.
Really?
There are two bugs out there. There's one bug for task flow, one bug for Cinder.
Oh, okay.
No response from the driver maintainers.
Because I mean, I don't know. Merging it and then having it fail for a month doesn't help a whole lot of stuff, but I mean,
I guess it would make it very visible and not easy to just forget about.
It's true.
Do drivers in Cinder actually get to use the Glassdoor engine that is?
Python 3.7
It's a separate one.
required project at time for it.
Well, it's the test flow library, but it's a separate instance of flows and stuff.
Okay, different.
It sounds like we must do it.
So my question is just, if we're merging a non-voting Python 3.7 job, if we don't pass, then it's probably premature to assert the
Project must try to
3.7 support,
it means
whatever you call that thing in that
Yeah.
setup.cfg.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I hate to be that guy, but
We know the LVM driver works and the RPD driver works. So I guess we want one driver, one vendor's driver to block
the whole thing.
Which vendor is it?
the Phoenix driver.
So it's interesting that this shows up only in the task flow usage in that driver and not in Cinder core code.
And that's what I think Ben thought it was actually something that we were mocking or something in unit tests, and that maybe runtime is actually just
Cool.
You're not going to see it in the code because your test jobs are running 3.6. 3.7 is going to be a thing for.
Well, you would see it in this job, though.
Okay.
You would see it in this new job.
Yeah, that's it. You just did unit test.
Do you have
But they could be broken on a.
the bug link that you can drop in there? And I'll send a nastygram to Helen and tell her team to look at this.
Can I ask a slightly related question to this that I've been wondering about?
Sure.
Nobody's going to try to kill Pi 3.6 anytime soon, are they?
Reset?
Yeah.
Not for training, we might drop it in Unicorn.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a huge problem if somebody tries to do that. Because I'm pretty sure we're going to be running our product on it for a while.
Well, then we probably won't drop it until,
Whenever Red Hat's done.
So I was trying to figure out what the mechanism was that that decision gets made. And it sounded like there was some theory around what distributions use. And
it's whatever the current LTS stable mainline release is for Red Hat, Canonical, and now SUSE.
so someone,
At the beginning of the cycle.
so somebody outside of Cinder should be covering this pretty well. We hope. Yeah.
Oh, did we ever talk about the requirements of third-party CI?
Oh, yeah, we usually have a whole topic on third-party CI.
No,
Yeah, I
I'm
wanted
so
to
tired of it.
Say that we should we should audit the third-party CI, and if they're not running at least some version of our support Python 3 by milestone 2, we mark them unsupported because,
Oh, yeah, we talked about that.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We need to go jab them all about the Tempest plugin too.
Yep. Yeah, I've got to-dos from Thursday on that one. Okay. Is that all you had on that one?
Okay, I was just gonna ask a little more about that. So the LAMC people were unresponsive on that?
They,
Seen any response on the bug report?
they don't
So,
pay any attention to our bugs or emails. I have to go to
Yeah,
Helen
but-
and push them.
And then it's a public requirement that they should be subscribing to the tags for their driver. So we shouldn't have to chase people down, we should be watching.
Oh. our comments here, you know, I mean, so I'm just saying, certainly. Reading this here, might be worth.
And she's not a,
on the shoulder, and maybe some resources you guys can discuss.
I think both of them know about it, but they're not the DNX materials.
Yeah, I
They're
know.
just at the same company.
I think there's a whole,
I think there's a business perspective to it.
there's a set of people at Red Hat that are trying to chase that team as well right now.
Yeah.
Because they have an open security bug upstream.
Is that the one with data left over?
No, this is the one after that one. That was the one that,
It's a discussion.
I should.
They've not been,
There's one guy left there in their UX team it was like a year ago.
okay.
Had them in Shanghai. There's one guy left. Everybody knows just this one guy is maintaining everything. Everybody else is left that team.
I had a friend who was trying to track down a Scale.io person. I got bounced to 4 or 5 people.
Helen Walsh.
Yeah, I've been.
I just kept getting forwarded saying, can someone find someone to work on this?
She's helping.
All right, are we done? Brain is
Tell us,
mushy.
dear leader, are we done?
Okay, I think we're done. I don't think we need to meet tomorrow. I would encourage people to come to the placement discussion like around 10-ish.
You need a
To,
placement service to decide when it is.
what's that?
You need a placement service to decide when it is.
Yeah, something like
Do
that.
you guys think you can use some placement again?
No, not at all.
It's
We're
not,
We're trying to understand what they need from us to be more useful.
Oh, more on the producer side.
yeah, I think there's
Yes.
a concept that we're gonna throw some data to them.
Yeah. Instead of throwing them a bone, we'll throw them some data.
No, I mean, that's totally different. side.
Yeah. Other words, I ask people to go through the to-dos here and, if you have to-dos, be aware of them. A couple of links where there are bug or reviews, please work on them. And I'll work on hopefully next week getting, a summary of all this out there.
Cool.
Do people want to have a team meeting next Wednesday?
No.
No? Should,
I can.
Eric's gonna be gone. He has all the work items, so maybe take a week off to let our brains rest. Okay. I'll kind of, let's plan that and I'll send a note to the mailing list. All right, thanks for all the good discussion. Thank you for being here. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you, Jack.
Yep. And on that note, we end our 3.5-hour recording
See you tonight.
at the happy hour. Yep, I'll be there.
Okay. See you.
See you.
But here notice the etherpad that says spoke from